Chapter 15. Naruto had a lot of work ahead of him. He had received word from his messenger that Gamabunta would be arriving in a few days. Of course the silly toad never said when. He'd just have to be prepared to eat whenever. He sighed and looked off in the direction of where he'd sent a messenger to Katsuyu. She was nice and probably wouldn't refuse an invitation, especially from someone she had saved in earlier years. His sensitive ears picked up the sound of feet padding toward him, and he looked over his shoulder to see a red fox with his tongue lolling out, panting heavily. "I was able to make it to Lady Katsuyu in time, my lord. She accepted your gracious invitation and said she would come in a few days." A few days must be some kind of code between bosses. I'll have to learn that. I bet you that they all show up at the same time. Anyways, how did her realm look? Lady Katsuyu's realm is very greener than ours. It's a veritable jungle with all kinds of slugs and their kin lazing about. They aren't a very productive people. I see. She'll still be a valuable ally. Have you seen your brother that I sent to talk to Handra? No, my lord. I hope he is all right though. The snakes aren't known for tactfulness. At least Manda wasn't. I notice you didn't call him Lord Manda. Any reason for that? I never considered him worthy of respect. The only reason he climbed that high in the ranks was because he was the biggest and strongest. Not to mention the meanest. I believe he demanded human sacrifices when he was summoned. Yes, I've heard something along those lines. He was not an honorable beast. It was for the best that he died, I suppose. Killed by his own summoner, no less. Well, I have to go check in with the council before I go back to the mortal realm. I'm putting you in charge of coming to get me when the others arrive. Oh, and let me know when your brother gets back. I want to be sure that he is safe. You're a strange one, my lord. The old Kyuubi wouldn't have cared if we made it back so long as the message was passed. And that's where we differ greatly. I do care. I hate the senseless shedding of blood and life. Now go enjoy yourself. Watch for your brother. The fox nodded and ran off back toward the village. Naruto sighed and followed after. He didn't really mind the council in this world. They weren't as biased as the one in the mortal realm, but he still had a few wrinkles to iron out. The council was supposed to be the right hand of the monarch, but if they had their own agendas, then that didn't work for the people. He'd have to keep his eyes open for any corruption. He turned his eyes skyward and put his hands in his pockets. He couldn't wait to bring Ino here in due time. He looked back down when he felt himself bump into something and heard the snickers of the foxes around him. He had walked right into the pillar of the palace without noticing. He glanced back sheepishly at the foxes who were trying to hold in their laughter and stuck his tongue out before darting inside. All who were holding back laughter exploded into a cacophony of gasps and guffaws. Their regent was a strange one indeed. The council was assembled in front of the steps leading to the throne and were all tapping their tails impatiently. They had been told to gather nearly a half hour ago and had yet to see neither hide nor hair of the monarch. Hinamori and Kazuma nodded to him as he walked past, and he gave them a wide grin. Usually in the world of canids the baring of teeth was a sign of aggression. Working with humans, however, had led to a new level of expression with the mouth. They had found over the years that a slight curling of the mouth or a twitch of the lips meant a lot to the person receiving your gaze. Naruto flopped down on the top step as was his custom and waved his hand signaling for them to begin. The elder bowed and spoke up. My lord, your meeting with the other chiefs is in a few days. We trust that you have a plan on getting an alliance with them? No, not really. I always preferred just going in blind and making up a plan as I went along. Well, it is your right, even though I don't agree. We'll leave that topic alone for the moment though. On to other matters. Your schedule between our realm and the mortal realm is a tenuous one. How do you propose we handle the situation when you are gone? I expect you three to be here in my stead, taking care of problems and listening to what the people need. While I am gone, I want you to get things ready for my little get-together with the other bosses. Any more business? Yes. One last thing. The people wish to see more of you during the day. This will require you to walk among them, get to know them. This is a deviation from our last ruler, but a pleasant one, I believe. We will wait until after your meeting to see where our next order of business will lead. You can count on us to take care of the day-to-day business in the realm. By your leave? Yes, that sounds good. You may all go now. I thank you all for cooperating. Now I have somewhere to be. I'm sure my wife is wondering where I am. 3 chuckles from the gathered council echoed through the halls as Naruto poofed out of existence. There was much to do before a gathering of bosses. Scene change. Ino sat at the table massaging her temples. The training for the children was at a standstill as far as taijutsu was concerned. Chakra control was going well, but only Hikaru was doing well in taijutsu. She was broken out of her thoughts when she heard a poof behind her and a pair of muscular arms wrapped around her shoulders. She leaned back into the embrace as far as she could and sighed happily. Welcome home, we missed you. I missed you too. So how have things been going? Horrible. Jugo and Karen need training in taijutsu, and we've found out through the grapevine that Lee's on a several months-long mission. We need your help. Naruto took her by the hand and led her to the couch where he leaned against the arm and Ino sat between his legs while she stroked his tails and he scratched her ears. This was a very comfortable position for the both of them and it settled their nerves. Ino purred and nuzzled the tails against her cheek. She simply adored her mate's fuzzy appendages. Jugo is too stiff for the Uchiha style and Sasuke wouldn't teach him anything until he mastered the Uchiha taijutsu. He has literally nothing except what we've taught him. Karen is very flexible, but she's too flexible for anything Tsunade Sakura or I could teach her. My style is the basic academy taijutsu while Sakura and Tsunade lean more toward brute strength. I need you to look into some of that knowledge you have and pull out something for them. Naruto stared up at the ceiling while scratching his wife's ears and thought hard. There were several styles that came to mind and it wouldn't be difficult for him to teach the children. Hikaru had his own unique style and it worked for him. He wouldn't need any work except to teach him new jutsus. He would need to see the other two in action though. He voiced this desire to Ino and she smiled before standing up. Well, follow me. The kids are downstairs practicing right now. Your guardians are really something else. Karen and Shin adore each other, although Jugo and Jin argue more often than not. The other two just lie around and try to help where they can. Jin and Penny have been teaching the kids how to play Go and Shugi, trying to get them to think with their minds more. Let's go and you'll see. Outside, the children were all sitting cross-legged on the ground, Jugo and Karen trying to keep a leaf floating above their foreheads while Hikaru had a blunted kunai floating above his. When he heard a familiar voice, he whipped his head around, losing concentration, and the kunai hit him in the forehead. It didn't register though as he flew into the arms of his father. Well, it's good to see you too, son. Have you been good for your mother? A vigorous nod came from the pinky blonde and Naruto sat him down while motioning for the children to gather round. Once everyone was settled and Naruto knelt down to the kids' level. All right. Jugo, Karen, I've heard the two of you have problems with taijutsu. You can't seem to find a style that suits you very well. I'm hoping I can remedy that. I have a library of styles in my head and I think I can delve far enough to find one that will mess your enemies up pretty good. Jugo, you're up. Let's see what you can do against Hikaru. Jugo and Hikaru walked away from the group and set themselves into the stances they knew, Hikaru in his freeform style and Jugo in his broken Uchiha style. When Naruto dropped his hand, it was over in a matter of seconds. Hikaru decimated poor Jugo. It wasn't the boy's fault since he never had proper teaching. This caused Naruto to scowl profusely. It seemed that many clans had fallen back on the presumption that their children were born suited for the styles they taught. Hinata was a perfect example of that. He nodded his head to Jugo and the sulking boy sauntered back to sit by his guardian, who thumped his tail against the boy's back reassuringly. Naruto smiled at the gesture as Karen stood and walked forward. Karen carried herself much like his childhood friend had. She seemed unsure of herself at first, but a yip from Shin made her smile and she stood a little taller. Hikaru still decimated her, but she seemed to flow more than Jugo. It was true what Ino told him. Jugo was a staunch fighter. He more than likely was stiff because of a willingness to get in close and fight hand to hand. Karen seemed to flow like water, bending this way and that to get away from Hikaru's unorthodox fighting style. As Hikaru led the out-of-breath girl back to the circle, Naruto checked his mind for styles that would complement their body structure and mentality. Ah, there the two were. He smiled as he came out of his trance and fixed the two with a stare. If I teach you these styles, I want you to know that you can never teach them to anyone who is not family. Never use them in front of your father, he'll copy them. Never use them against each other in a malicious way. Do you understand? Jugo nodded his head, but Karen looked somewhat confused. Naruto asked her what the problem was and nearly laughed at her question. What's malicious mean? Once the adults were all through laughing and Shin had explained the definition of the word, Karen agreed never to harm any family members with her technique. Naruto nodded and formed his favorite hand sign, making 3 of himself. The clones went and stood beside their respective child while receiving mental orders from the original. Once the information was passed, Naruto straightened up and addressed them one last time. Hikaru, my clone will be teaching you a new Doton Jutsu, a defensive one. I expect you to learn it before I have to leave. Jugo, Karen, you two will be learning 2 styles that have been forgotten over the centuries. Hikaru, go on and practice while I talk to your siblings. Hikaru stood and left with the clone Genmaki in tow. Naruto made 2 more clones and stood in the spot where the 3 children had fought. Now then, Jugo, I'm going to be teaching you an art known as Muay Thai. It concentrates on getting in close and striking with the joints where the bone is harder. You will use your elbows, your knees, your shins, your hands and grapples to lure your opponent in. Now watch. Naruto sized up his clone and shuffled into the Muay Thai stance, and his clone assumed his normal bestial style. They rushed at each other and Naruto thrust his palm at the clone's face. It ducked and was met with an uplifting knee, to which it dodged to the side. The clone stood and faced its maker, bending low at the waist and flexing its claws. It darted in but was met with a shin to the stomach and 2 elbows crashing down onto the back of its skull, disengaging it. Naruto turned back to the children to see them staring wide-eyed at the display. Cool. I'm going to be learning how to fight like that? Yes, but that was just a small sample. Your entire body is a weapon in Muay Thai, and you will be doing certain exercises to toughen up your skin and bones. Wouldn't want the skin splitting in the middle of battle now, would we? Jugo shook his head furiously, causing a chuckle to rumble in Naruto's chest. He dismissed the boy with his clone and sent the 2 off to begin the lessons. He turned back to Karen and motioned for the other clone to join him. While it ambled over, he went back into lecture mode for the little girl. Karen, I've seen that you are very flexible and agile, especially for your age. What I'm about to teach you is more of a dance than a fighting style. However, it is very effective because it relies on constantly being in motion. While fighting in this style, the worst thing you can do is stop before the opponent is beaten. You'll spend a lot of time ducking and dodging, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Since your upper body will be weaker than most of your opponents, you'll need to focus on leg strength and being fast. Introducing kunais into this style is something else I'd like to do. Now then, let me introduce you to the art of capoeira. Once more the clone slipped into the bestial style and Naruto began to gyrate his body in unusual ways. When the clone went for a swipe, Naruto leant back and handspringed away. Keeping his body low, he waited for the clone to come at him again and tried to sweep its legs out from under it. It leapt into the air and came down with an axe kick, to which Naruto rolled to the side and leapt up, swinging a kick at its head. It ducked, and when he came down it tried to sweep kick him, only to have him stand on one hand and maneuver his feet for another kick. It ducked and was met by a headbutt that dispelled it. Naruto stood again and went back to lecture mode. Of course, that is only a small sample of the entire style. It relies on feint, subterfuge and headbutts, among other things. It's all about feeling your opponent out and moving with his movements like a river flowing downstream. You flow with your opponent before finding your chance to strike. Not to mention that since you seem to be dancing with them, it infuriates them more often than not, leading to an easy victory once they become enraged. Now go with your instructor. Karen nodded and stood to follow the clone with stars in her eyes and Shin on her heels. Naruto smiled and turned back to Ino. Now then, where are the other 2? They're at Tsunade's house drinking tea, I believe. Well, Tsunade's probably drinking sake, but that's beside the point. Why? I need to make sure that they understand not to interfere in the kids' taijutsu training. I'll write several scrolls on how to do the forms, but after that it's up to the kids. Hikaru can help them. With that freeform style of his, he can pretty much adapt to anything, and he learns better from a scroll anyway. Let's get this over with so I can do some other things. Like what? Like finding Shikamaru and setting up a shugi match between him and Penny. Ino's mouth formed an O in understanding, and they walked off to Tsunade's house with their tails entwined. Scene change, Tsunade sat sipping her tea while making small talk with Sakura. It was still strange to her all the changes that had come about since her son had become a demon. She took another sip of tea and set the cup down, looking across at the pink-haired woman who was reading the paper. She remembered the brat who came into her office begging to be made her apprentice and smiled. She remembered marrying the two she considered family and smiled more. Then she remembered how Sakura had left Naruto for the Uchiha, and she unknowingly growled, causing Sakura to set her paper aside and look at her old master questioningly. Tsunade saw her out of the corner of her eye and shrugged. Just reminiscing about how some things have gone in recent years and what we could have done to make them better. Do you ever regret things in the past? Sakura took a last sip of tea and stood to put her cup in the sink. Tsunade heard her sigh. I regret a lot of things. A lot of things. But what I most regret is... Hey, there's Naruto. Really? Where? He and Ino are walking this way. Should I put some more tea on? Yes, please do. I'll get Megumi and Penny from upstairs. Sakura began to fill the pot again and put it on the oven while Tsunade made her way upstairs. A knock on the door signaled the couple's arrival and they were ushered inside. Sakura sat them down on a couch with a cup of tea in their hands as Tsunade came down the stairs followed by the two foxes. They bowed their heads to their rulers and took up stations beside their designated charges. Naruto waved at them merrily, making the two foxes sweat drop. Were kings supposed to be so flippant? I've come back, as you can see. I've got the children working on taijutsu styles. I know of that will be perfect for them. You can go and see them now if you wish. Penny, I need you to accompany me to find a friend of mine. Why? To fulfill our bargain when you agreed to come to the mortal realm. Tsunade shivered as she stood up. I wish you wouldn't call this world that, Naruto. It's eerie coming from you. Sorry, Bachan, it's what it's called though. Can't change that. Doesn't mean you have to call it that in my presence. Ah well. You three go check out the kids. Penny, follow me and Ino. Scene change. Shikamaru had been having yet another boring day. Doing paperwork in his office was not an ideal thing. He had hated paper tests and anything to do with writing something down since the academy days. He had been passing the time idly throwing a rubber ball at the door and catching it as it bounced back. His day got more interesting when he threw the ball one last time and it bounced off one Uzumaki Naruto's forehead before rolling into the corner. Shikamaru took his legs off the desk and smiled at his friends. Ino, Naruto, to what do I owe the honor? Hey, that isn't Genmaki. Nope, this is Tsunade's familiar Penny. She is a master of Shugi and Go and would challenge you to a game. Shikamaru's eyebrows raised into the stratosphere. A fox playing Shugi? What an interesting development. He leaned back in his chair and eyed the fox. How can she play though? She doesn't have hands or thumbs. I pick up the pieces with my tails, human. Do not act as if I am an inferior species because I lack your pitiful appendages. Ino frowned at her subordinate. Penny, be nice. Shikamaru is a friend of mine and it looks bad on the Vulpine if you are rude. I apologize, Lady Ino. Forgive my insolence. Shikamaru, I Penny challenge you to a Shugi match. One game only. If you fail to impress me, I shall go back to my realm and Lord Naruto will have to find another fox to be Lady Tsunade's familiar. These were the conditions we set down before I agreed to come here, correct? While Naruto was not happy with this development, he nodded his assent. Shikamaru sighed and stood up. Troublesome. So my enjoying a leisurely game of Shugi is now about to keep you here in this realm. Tell me, how good are you? I haven't had any good opponents since Asuma died. I am an excellent player and one of the best at strategy. If you don't believe me, then try me. I have never lost a match and I don't think I'll begin by losing to a mere mortal. Now Shikamaru is not a prideful person. He's level-headed and tends to think ahead more often than not. However, he doesn't like to lose at a game unless it's to a respected opponent, and doubly so if that opponent is a female. Ino saw her friend becoming annoyed and knew that this fox had struck a chord. Shikamaru stood up abruptly and walked around his desk. Well then, let's see if a lowly mortal can best a crafty kitsune. Let's do this in a place where everyone can see us play. Agreed. Several hours later, a gaping Penny was on her last leg. She had tried every strategy she could think of, but after thinking for a bit, Shikamaru was able to counter every one. The fox was now looking the board over carefully, looking for any avenue to get out of the position she found herself in. She was finding it difficult. Shikamaru was a ruthless player. Shikamaru found himself sweating it out as well. Penny was a genius, the best player he'd ever gone against. Asuma was no slouch, but she put him to shame. He had had to use his pose at least 20 times over their several hours-long match, and it was hard to read her moves. If this were a real battlefield, she'd have had him pincered into a corner several times. He'd had to sacrifice several pawns to get out of those predicaments. He looked across at his opponent and a small smirk found its way to his face. He hoped that even if he lost she'd stay. He hadn't found an opponent like her before. Penny's grimace grew larger and larger the more she sat there. Her options were very limited. If she moved this way it was checkmate, if she moved that way it was checkmate. A mere mortal, had her backed into a corner. It's been said you should never corner a fox, but this Shikamaru had her backed in and had defanged her. Bowing her head low, she bared her fangs. I concede defeat. The roar from the crowd was deafening, and when the two turned they saw that there was indeed a congregation around them. They had been so caught up in the game, they hadn't noticed the throng gathering around them. Shikamaru reached across the game board and offered his hand to the fox. I don't know what your custom is for when someone wins a match, but here we shake hands. I don't have hands, but I can offer my tail as a substitute. That was an excellent match. I mean Shikamaru. I accept you as a rival in Shugi and I will stay here. But you have yet to prove that you can beat me in Go. Let us do this another time. I agree. Shall we say every Tuesday at 3? That's my normal day off and that should give us plenty of time to play. Maybe we won't have such a crowd next time. Agreed. Now if you'll excuse me, I left my charge with the others. I need to be on my way. Shikamaru nodded and stood to leave. He looked toward the door where the three Vulpine were leaving and smiled. So damn troublesome. Don't know what I'd do without them though. Scene change. Tsunade and Sakura meanwhile had been watching the children training and were to say the least astonished at how far they had come already. Hikaru was a given and the Doton technique he was training with was coming along nicely. Jugo was taking to Muay Thai like a fish to water. Since he wasn't strong enough to put a solid punch on the clone, it had taken several blows already. He'd need to up his endurance however, and he'd have to toughen up his body literally. Karen, as Naruto said, flowed into her style like she was born to do it. The clone had started her off slowly, taking her through a dance that saw them try to sweep each other's legs and pirouetting on their toes to get in kicks. She was more flexible than the clone, lacking the muscle definition that it had, and landed more hits than should have been normal. Shin and Jin stood to the side, Shin bouncing up and down with unbridled joy and anticipation, hooting and hollering whenever his little mistress managed to land a hit, Jin stoically watching and analyzing, seeing what he could pick apart to make his charge a better ninja. Megumi lay to the side by Genmaki, the two talking about his children. It was hard to believe that such a group of foxes were brought together, but they had all taken to their roles with gusto. Everyone looked up when Naruto, Ino, and a sullen-looking Penny came walking into the yard. Penny strode over to Genmaki and Megumi and lay down beside them, mumbling under her breath. Genmaki smirked and nudged her with one of his tails. So Shikamaru beat you, huh? I warned you not to underestimate him. Stuff it, chew toy. Genmaki snickered at his fellow caretaker and turned his attention back to the children. He sniffed the air and cocked an ear in confusion. He turned to Megumi and saw her with a smile on her face. What is that smell in the air? It's saturating it. That, my friend, is the smell of heat. It would seem that our queen is coming into her season. She's been fidgeting ever since Lord Naruto came back. If she makes it past tonight, I'd be surprised. She's got to be going crazy. Genmaki nodded his head in understanding. His wife had been insatiable when she'd come into heat. He heard chuckling beside him and quickly realizing he'd been drooling. Shaking his head, he tried to regain his dignity. I take it we should have the children stay at Sakura or Tsunade's house then. It would probably be for the best. What do you think, Penny? Hush, I'm trying to think up a strategy for my Go match. The rest of the evening passed in relative silence. The children all had made progress in their training and Naruto would be able to help them the next day. Before everyone split up for the evening, Naruto took Genmaki aside. Hey, I've been meaning to ask. In summon speak, what is a few days? Roughly 3 days. Okay, at least now I know when to go back. That's a load off my mind. Wish I could figure out why Ino's so clingy though. She fidgeted a lot today and she has a very interesting smell coming off her. Do you know anything about that? Jinchuuriki grinned and closed his eyes. I believe it would be best if I took Hikaru to Tsunade's tonight. I'll inform them not to bother the two of you and we'll eat at Ichiraku's tonight. Try to keep it down, okay? What the hell are you talking about? As Jinchuuriki walked away, he swished his tails happily. Soon the royal family would be what it should be, a family. He turned to his king and smiled. Your maid is in heat, Lord Naruto. I believe you have a rough time ahead of you. Enjoyable but rough. If you thought she was bad normally, you have no idea what's in store. Naruto's eyes widened and the fear was evident. But she nearly kills me normally. What do I do? Pray that Kami loves you. Naruto whimpered when he heard Ino call him. With a last look over his shoulder to the retreating Jinchuuriki, he headed towards his doom. Scene change. Ino had been feeling hot all day. She couldn't explain it, but whenever she looked at Naruto she had an irresistible urge to jump him right then and there. As he said his last goodbyes to Jinchuuriki for the evening, she headed inside the house. Before he made it inside, she had bolted all the doors and windows, and once he was inside she locked the deadbolt with a sharp clack. Naruto froze when he heard that sound. He slowly pivoted on his heel to see a heavily panting Ino with a glazed look in her eye. He backed away slowly as she stalked her prey. He couldn't deny, however, that the pheromone she was emitting was intoxicating. As she slid across the floor toward him, the feeling of fear and excitement built even more, and he totally lost it when she spoke in a sultry voice, her tails waving wildly, her ears pinned back as she crouched before springing. Here, Foxy Foxy. Come to Mama. Chapter 16. Naruto lay on his back staring up at the ceiling. He had never been so tired in all his life. He groaned and tried to move. No go. His body felt like a lead weight. Turning his head to the side, he took in his wife's glowing visage, her smile seeming to light up the bedroom. Part of the reason he couldn't move was soreness, the other part was that she was half laying on top of him, an arm and a leg thrown over him as she nuzzled into his chest. Resigning himself to his fate, he thumped his head backwards on his pillow and sighed. He still had another 2 days in this realm, and with his wife in heat, it was going to be hell. He still had to help with training the kids, and when he couldn't be here he had to make up scrolls so that they could continue to train. He couldn't do that if Ino kept him locked in the bedroom until she was sated. Hopefully their romp last night left her too sore to continue anything for the rest of the day. Then he remembered a demon's unnatural healing ability and squinted his eyes in frustration. More than likely when she woke he would be preoccupied for another few hours. She had been frustrating to finish off as a mortal. As a demon she was damn near insurmountable in the bedroom. She never seemed to run out of steam. Deciding to try to push his luck, he removed his wife's arm and leg and rolled her onto her back. She whined at the lack of warmth and snuggled further into the covers. Breathing a sigh of relief, he stood and cracked his back, stretching the kinks out that his wife had worked into him the night before. He looked up at the ceiling fan and saw what appeared to be one of Ino's sequin thongs. How in the hell did that get up there? He continued to look around the destroyed room as he put on what clothes he could find. His set last night had been shredded by an overexcited Ino in a fit of passion. He was afraid for a moment that her claws were coming dangerously close to his little friend and that they would be separated for life. His fears were assuaged when she revered it like a holy talisman and showered her affection and worship on his little buddy. One of the best and worst nights of his life for sure. He'd never thought sex could be so scarring. Where Ino had learned some of the things they did, he'd never know. And prayed he never found out. It sure as hell wasn't his books. He preferred a slower, playful style. His wife, however, had more closely resembled a Tasmanian devil in heat, snarling, ripping, tearing at flesh and leaving furrows in his skin as she clawed at his back. When she'd sunk her fangs into his neck on the mark, he thought he was going to die. Pleasurably, of course. After finding enough clothing to resemble a half-dressed man, he tried to sneak out of the room. As soon as the doorknob clicked, he felt a presence pressed against his back and began to shiver in both fear and anticipation. His wife had woken when she heard the click and was now rubbing her cheek against his back and purring with her arms wrapped around his waist. "And where do you think you're going?" Naruto's eyes darted around the room seeking escape. The spirit was willing but the flesh was bruised and spongy. This woman was trying to kill him. Ino purred again and moved her hands further south, making him shake against her. Now, husband. Have you forgotten we can read each other's thoughts? I'm not trying to kill you. It's just that I have a fire between my legs and I need you to put it out. Ino sweetie please. Don't make me do this. I'm tired, I'm sore, and I need to help the kids practice. Ino smiled sweetly and began to massage him through his pants. He choked back a groan and tried to jerk the door open, but she held it closed with one palm. Naruto, turn around. Naruto now. Naruto. Turn around. Now. Inu. Stop whining and take it like a man. With a final burst of strength, Naruto picked his wife up by the waist and threw her back onto the bed. Ino landed with a snarl and tackled him viciously as he flung the door open. They tumbled outside and down the hallway, clawing and biting the whole way. Thinking maybe he could lose her if he rolled them both down the stairs, Naruto took the plunge and listened to her indignant shrieks and squeals of pain in between his grunts. The plan did not go very well since he landed at the bottom of the stairwell on his back with a naked Ino on top of him. Setting her lips into a vicious grimace, she grabbed him by the shirt and hauled him up to face her. Growling low in her throat, she bared her fangs at her mate before smirking and slamming her lips into his. His eyes flew open and he tried to struggle, but it was in vain. Deciding to give in to the inevitable, he deepened the kiss and she jerked her head back. She purred and looked at him through half-lidded eyes before beginning to rip his clothes apart again. He sighed in defeat and moaned when she pressed hard on one of his bruises. Silly Foxy, you know Ino likes it rough. Scene change, Naruto emerged from his house several hours later, even sorer and more beat down than that morning. Ino had elected to sleep and thoroughly wore out and satisfied. The kids and other two women looked at him with wide eyes. He looked like he'd been through a war zone. Clad only in sweatpants since he couldn't find a shirt that didn't look like it had been put through a wood chipper, and foregoing sandals since they only made his feet hurt more, if that was humanly possible, he trudged forward. Without a word, he made 3 clones and sent them to work with the kids. The kids walked away looking over their shoulders at the blonde as he flopped on the grass spread eagle and groaned loudly. Sakura and Tsunade, concerned for his well-being, walked over to ask what was wrong. He told them nothing and they kept pressing the issue. The laughter from the foxes was heard behind them and they turned to find all the foxes with huge grins and shaking bodies. Tsunade raised an eyebrow and asked what was so damn funny. Genmaki caught his breath enough to answer. He's just tired, Lady Tsunade. He'll be fine with some rest. Okay, but what did this to him? He has bruises all over and looks like he's been through a shinobi war. Penny snickered and rolled to her side. Lady Ino is in heat. And I believe she is the rough type when it comes to her season. Sakura's eyes widened and her hands flew to her mouth as she tried to stifle the giggles that threatened to burst forth. Naruto shot her a withering glare which only made her laugh harder. Tsunade made no effort to hide her amusement and spent the rest of the day teasing the poor king. Around lunchtime his wife made her appearance. Ino sashayed out of the house wearing a white tank top and blue skirt, smiling the whole way. Tsunade and Sakura looked up from their seats beside a knocked-out Naruto and returned her wave and smile. They had teased him for over an hour before sleep finally claimed him and his bruises began to heal. Ino smiled at her husband and plopped down beside him on the other side from Tsunade and Sakura. Sakura, still being somewhat of a gossip hound, decided that details were needed. So heat, huh? What's that like? Ino rolled her shoulders and laid back, using Naruto's stomach like a pillow as she stretched out on the grass. It's weird. It's not like arousal, it's like a constant need to get him. I literally made him black and blue last night, and this morning he tried to run away from me and I tackled him. We fought a little, rolled down the stairs, and I ended up on top of him. The rest is all a blur. I've been a little hard on the poor guy, I know, but I can't help myself. So how long does this last? I dunno. I've never been in heat before. It's a totally new experience. Hey, wanna see something funny? The other two women nodded their heads and watched as Ino lifted herself onto her knees and straddled Naruto's stomach. Bending low, she began to lick and nibble his ear. He started squirming underneath her, his face contorting with every movement her mouth made. Tsunade watched with amusement as Ino continued to torture the poor man. Sakura sat half worried, half laughing, watching Ino 1 second and making sure the kids weren't coming the next. The foxes merely looked on, wondering what would happen when their king awakened. In Naruto's mind he was confused. The sensation he was feeling was familiar and very enticing. But at the same time he was afraid because of it. Part of this feeling offered pain, the other part offered pleasure. His mind racked itself trying to come up with an answer. Who or what could make him feel such a mixture of pleasure and pain? His brain nearly went into overload when his databank found its answer. Ino. Ino watched with a wide grin as Naruto's eyes flew wide open and grimaced in trepidation as he was replaced with a log. As she straddled the offending piece of wood, she looked around and finally heard him cursing in his mind. Smiling as wide as she could, she turned to see him in the tree behind her, shaking with both fear and rage. He'd let her get too close in his tiredness, and it nearly led to him being jumped again. "Ah, Naruto, you know I wouldn't do such a thing." He looked shocked when she sent her message to him. Psychically contacting each other was not a favorite pastime of theirs since it took so much effort and energy, but in certain situations it was necessary. Bullshit. You were about 2 seconds away from ripping off my damn pants. I am not letting you anywhere near me. In fact, I have to go back early. Ino scowled, and it permeated its way into her thoughts. And why is that? I have certain things I have to prepare for. Don't worry, I've had a clone working on scrolls for the kids. They'll be fine. I need to make sure that our people understand that they need to be respectful of the other chiefs and bosses. They need to learn that while we are powerful, we cannot stand against a contingency of others. And besides, you're in heat and I can't concentrate if I have to look over my shoulder for you every 3 seconds. Ah, come on Naruto, I'm not that bad. You shredded all my clothes so I wouldn't be able to hide my beautiful wonderful dick, were your exact words, I believe. Ino blushed and Tsunade and Sakura looked back and forth between them, wondering what was being said. Ino's eyes hardened in a moment and she put her hands on her hips. Fine, if you're going then I'm going with you. Absolutely not. I can't be distracted, Ino. Don't worry, I won't be a distraction. I won't touch you the whole time. Ino, you're in heat. You can't control yourself. Look, Uzumaki Naruto. I'm going with you and that's final. Naruto groaned and held his head in his hands. He'd already lost this argument. What about the children? They need protection. Hikaru can summon us and the foxes are here. They'll be fine. Besides, I want to see our kingdom. Fine, but you screw this up and no sex for a year. Ino's face went pale and her mouth fell open. That was the worst thing he could have punished her with. That or never singing to her again. Tsunade and Sakura snickered at her obvious discomfort and distaste of the threat. But that's... You can't. Fine. But you screw up and I get to have my way with you with no whining. Deal? Deal. By the time they were through with their deal-making, the children had come back wondering what lunch was going to be. Naruto, being tired, couldn't muster the energy to fix lunch, so that fell to Tsunade and Sakura. Well, it fell to Sakura since Tsunade could burn Lucky Charms in ice-cold milk. Naruto and Ino went back to the house. Ino to look for an outfit that would bring out her regal qualities and not clash with her purple fur. Naruto threw on a white undershirt and shuffled into town to buy some new outfits. Once the children were fed and everyone was settled in, Naruto explained the situation. Okay guys, me and Ino are going to the Fox Realm. I don't know how long we'll be gone, so don't advertise that we're not here, okay? Try to stay on the grounds if possible, and I want the foxes with you every time you step outside. Vulpine, if you see anything that even looks remotely dangerous, react with intent to kill. Any unknown scents are to be dealt with as you would any unknown scent to the realm. Understood? The foxes all nodded in acknowledgement. Shin looked absolutely ecstatic. He was always one for a good fight. His overexuberant personality bled over into all aspects of his life. He truly was the foxy equivalent of Lee. The rest all looked apathetic to the concept or had a grim countenance upon their face. Tsunade and Sakura looked pensive. If they had to watch all 3 children, it was a huge responsibility. Thank Kami for the foxes. They were an absolute godsend. Naruto looked over his family with concerned eyes. This was a bad idea in his opinion, but Ino could not be swayed. He cut his eyes to the blonde in question and saw that she had no discernible look on her face. She was a blank slate. His lips twitched in annoyance and he turned back to look at his son. Hikaru gazed up at him with big eyes. Hikaru, I want you to help watch over your brother and sister. If you see anything out of the ordinary, anything that seems misplaced, if you see a trace of Uchiha Sasuke or any of those that might be loyal to him, you summon me, you hear? Don't leave things to chance. Don't be a hero. You call me, and no matter what I'm doing, I'll come. Do you understand, son? Yes, sir. Good. I expect you all to have no problems while we're gone. And Tsunade Sakura. The two women watched as Naruto stood and put his arm around Ino's waist, pulling her in close. He looked at them pleadingly, begging them to heed his words. Please keep them safe. Be safe. We'll return soon, hopefully. See you later. In a flash of flame, the two disappeared, leaving the 5 humans and 5 foxes. Genmaki sighed and turned to the rest of their little group. Putting on a foxy grin, he spoke. Well then, who's up for lunch? Shall we go to Ichiraku's or the new sushi bar? Sakura put a finger to her chin and thought for a moment. I suppose we should go to Ichiraku's. The sushi place doesn't allow pets. All the foxes scowled and began to grumble under their breath. Tsunade thought she heard one of them, although it was very low. Not a goddamn pet. She wasn't sure which one it was. Scene change. In the fox realm, a flash of flame erupted in the middle of the market and sent all the foxes scattering. Vulpine of all kinds and colors dove for cover as the flames rose and then abated, leaving their king in his tailed glory and a strange woman with purple tails and ears. Once their monarch was seen, all the foxes came out of hiding and surrounded the couple. Ino turned round and round, taking them all in and seeing that there were colors of the rainbow that she hadn't thought possible for fur. Naruto greeted his people in his usual lackadaisical way, and they reciprocated in kind. In the short time he had been king, the foxes had all learned that their king didn't stand on ceremony, and he didn't like to be treated as something special. When he needed to be serious, however, he was terrifying. They had all seen his true power, and the mere aura he gave off was enough to bring the weak to their bellies. To the most powerful among them, breathing was a chore. They revered him as their leader and feared him as an enemy. Naruto looked around and saw that they weren't far from the palace. He grabbed Ino around the waist again and bade the foxes gather round with a sweeping motion of his hand. Once he had their attention, he spoke in his loud booming voice. Everyone gather at the palace. Tell everyone you see and be there in 30 minutes. I shall present your queen to you. The Vulpine perked up at that announcement. Many made to swing their eyes back to the blonde woman with him, but found her and their king gone like the wind. Yelling at the top of their lungs that the king had returned with their queen, the foxes went into a tizzy, running about and scrambling for a good spot at the palace grounds. Naruto and Ino arrived in the palace on top of the dais. He sat Ino down and plopped down on the top step. Ino spun round and round on her heel, taking in all the beauty and majesty of the marble and gold construct. Her eyes finally settled on the throne, and she squealed before she went to leap upon it. She never made it. Naruto appeared in front of her and caught her in his arms. Ah, come on, Naruto. I want to sit on the throne. Just once, please, see? No. Oh, so Mr. High and Mighty won't let his queen sit on the throne? You condescending little. Ino. I don't sit on the throne either. I won't sit on it. Ino started at that comment. A king not sitting on his throne was ludicrous. It was tantamount to heresy. She turned her eyes to him and asked why. Naruto sighed and loosened his grip on her as he guided them both back to the top step. Ino, that throne is a symbol to the people of this realm. The old Kyuubi would sit upon that throne and send down his judgment upon the people. The one who sat on that throne ahead of me was a beast, and I will not accept a seat that was sat upon by a tyrant. Then have it melted down and a new one made. You are the king, Naruto. I know. And that throne is a reminder to myself that I will never be what the old Kyuubi was. I'd rather have my powers stripped from me and my tails yanked out with a pair of pliers. I'd much rather sit atop the top step and address my people as Uzumaki Naruto, king of the foxes, husband to Uzumaki Ino, father to Uzumaki Hikaru and Kyuubi of the Bijou, than to sit upon a throne as a reminder that these people will never touch their monarch. I refuse to compromise my beliefs for tradition. And the people love me for it. I see. I agree. Have I told you how sexy you are when you're being all regal and serious? Naruto sighed and hardened his hold on Ino's waist, keeping her secure and out of reach of his ding-a-ling. Not now, Ino. The people will be coming soon, and I'd rather not have them see me with my pants down. Or yours either. Ino pouted and crossed her arms, her tails beating a mad rhythm across his back. He was saved by the appearance of the council. The elder took up its station in the middle and Kazama and Hinamori took up the sides. Welcome back, Lord Naruto. We've been preparing for the arrival of the chiefs and did not expect you back so early. Who is the young woman with you and why does she have two tails? This is my wife Ino, elder. Your queen sits before you. The elder's eyes flew wide and the three councilmen bowed their heads before their new queen. Ino rather liked having subservient people and had a smirk on her face until she saw the disapproving look out of the corner of her eyes. She quickly dropped the smirk and took up a reassuring smile. Please don't treat me any different than you would my husband. I only wish to serve as a queen should. I won't be around much for several years anyway. At least not until the children are grown. We understand. Still, your highness will be a big hit with the people. There are no others with royal purple fur that my colleagues or I know of. I think you should go to the balcony now, my lord and lady. The people await a complete ruling family. Ino giggled as she latched onto Naruto's arm and gave the council a knowing look. And if I have my way, then the family will be complete very soon. Naruto groaned and pulled his wife along, ignoring the questioning looks of the council. He turned before they walked onto the balcony. Did the messenger for the serpents ever make it back? Yes, my lord, although he was quite shaken. Apparently the snakes are still in a state of uncertainty as to their leadership, but Handra promised to be here regardless. As long as the messenger is okay. Once the two were gone, the elder turned to the other two and smirked. Well, it seems our queen is in heat. Perhaps we shall have a royal family soon. Hinamori smiled and nodded her head. Indeed. And with such strong parents, the child will be a boon to the Vulpine without doubt. Kazama just looked after the two humanoid foxes with a smile on his face. Things were always fun when the king was around, and his wife was just as eccentric as he was. Scene change, Naruto stood on the balcony with Ino by his side, looking out over the sea of multicolored fur. He smiled when he spotted Jinmaki's wife and Kits amongst the crowd. He took a deep breath and shouted over the din. People of the Vulpine, I stand before you with a person I have promised to deliver unto you. I bring before you your queen Uzumaki Ino. The foxes erupted into a cacophony of yips and barks, filling the air with a pure essence of joy and happiness. The Vulpine hadn't had a true royal family for eons. It was a true moment of peace for the fox realm. Ino smiled and beheld her subjects. They were certainly a spunky bunch. Hi. Naruto snickered at his wife's shyness. She was never this indecisive and quiet around anyone. Ino shot him a dirty look and straightened her back. My fellow Vulpine, I have come finally and stand before you as your queen Uzumaki Ino, wife of Uzumaki Naruto. I have come to represent our kingdom in the talks with the toads, serpents and slugs, and will stand by my husband in whatever he decides. Ino glanced at Naruto and he gulped when he saw that rebellious twinkle in her eye. Know also that I will personally pound his ass into the ground if he gets out of line. Naruto scowled at his wife but eased up when he heard the waves of chuckles from the crowd below. Ino stood with her hands on her hips and a huge grin on her face. Her husband grinned largely as well and put his hand on top of head, ruffling her hair and ears. If you are quite through posturing for the people, I'd like to take a walk and show you the kingdom. I believe you'll find it beautiful. As the council shooed the foxes back to their lives below, Ino rested her head against Naruto's shoulder and leaned into his embrace. I'd like nothing better. As they walked through the streets, Ino nodded to everyone she passed. The foxes all smiled and bowed to her reverently. Ino decided she liked the realm better than Konoha. Here she was accepted readily and her husband was beloved. The realm was much more beautiful than Konoha, and the streets, despite being inhabited by animals, were clean and well maintained. Then they went to the fields. The royal couple stood at the edge of the field and watched as the crews of foxes cleared the area for the meeting. The large size of the chiefs made diplomacy a hard thing to deal with, but luckily the fox realm boasted large and relatively level fields. Wouldn't want Gamabunta's sake cup splashing over. Ino sighed and wrapped her arms around Naruto's waist as she soaked in the awe-inspiring beauty of their home. It's so gorgeous, Naruto. How did I get so lucky? Naruto smelled salt in the air and looked down to see tears in Ino's eyes. She looked up at him, practically beaming. I'm a lucky person, Naruto. I have you, I have Hikaru, and I'm a queen to a whole realm. What did I do to deserve this? Naruto smiled down at his wife and kissed her forehead as he wrapped his arms around her shoulders. She pressed herself into his chest and sobbed. He leant down and whispered into her ear. It's because you're a good person, Ino. Good deeds are always rewarded in the end. You came and made mine and Hikaru's lives complete again. You brought me back to our friends. You've taken care of me for nearly 2 years now. I couldn't imagine life without you now. No matter how much of a pain in the ass you are sometimes. I love you, Ino. Ino looked up at her husband and smiled before nuzzling back into his chest. You were on such a roll and then you fucked it up. Nice save telling me you love me though. Things were silent for a moment until Ino began to squirm. Naruto's eyes flew open and he began to chant no over and over in his head. Hey Naruto? Yes? Are there any secluded places that most foxes don't go? Yeah. Why? She shot him a vicious grin and gripped onto his butt with both hands. Because I've always wanted to do it outside. Let's go. Naruto hung his head in defeat and led the way to his doom. Hopefully she wouldn't wear him completely out before the meeting. Chapter 17. Naruto sighed as he and Ino stood in the middle of the field they would use for the talks. It wasn't bad enough his wife was horny as a cat in their normal lives, now she was in heat and excited as hell at the prospect of seeing their kingdom. It wasn't often he had to be the adult in their relationship, but now he found himself growing tired of having to keep her reeled in. Damn, if only he'd thought to bring a leash. He blushed at that thought. Ino was kinky enough. He didn't need to be giving her any more playful ideas. Unfortunately for him, Ino had been concentrating on his thoughts, having nothing better to do, and grinned at him. You know, we never have done a master-slave kind of thing. Good idea, honey. Ino, seriously, don't get any ideas while we're here. We have to keep a certain amount of dignity. Aw, come on, Naruto. You don't think the female population would find it cute seeing me lead you around with a leash? Personally, I think you'd look hot in a spiked collar. That is not what I was imagining, and you know it. Besides, there ain't no way in hell you could get me to let you put a collar on me. Ino grinned ferally and put her face right into his. With her hormones out of whack, the close contact was getting to her. She breathed heavily as she ground out her retort. Wanna bet? As Naruto sputtered, trying to think up a viable reason not to, he felt the ground shake and looked around for the source. To his left he saw the leaping of a few toad-shaped objects. To his right were the undulating shapes of what appeared to be slugs. And to his rear were the familiar movements of a snake. Thank Kami for small miracles. And it seems that Handra came on his own. Interesting. They both watched as Gamabunta, Gamakichi and Gamatatsu bounded into the clearing, sending the foxes that had been preparing the area scurrying for safety. No sense in hanging around if the guests had arrived. Gamabunta looked around for his former summoner and could not find him. He frowned and turned to his 2 children, seeing they were also looking around for him. The brat had always been a stickler for punctuality. Hey, you old geezer. Down here. Bunta looked down at his feet and saw the 2 blondes standing before him. He leaned down and focused on Naruto. Oi, brat. Why aren't you in your true form? That's a sign of disrespect, you know. I am in my true form. I like this form best, so it's my true form. Besides, it's kind of weird looking at you guys on my level, and Ino can't get that big yet. I don't want her feeling left out. That is most noble, Naruto-san. I admire that in a man, unlike other associates of mine. Naruto turned to see Katsuyu behind him with what he thought was a smile on her face. Her voice certainly sounded mirthful. Bunta scoffed and blew a large cloud of smoke from his pipe. Bah, this boy has never been noble. I've known him for years, Katsuyu. Don't let that facade fool you. He's only acting like that because his wife would brain him if he wasn't a good boy. Be that as it may, Gamabunta, you should take a page out of his book. You act much too like a yakuza than a proper chief. Your father was not nearly so abrasive. And my father wasn't able to keep the toads in line like I do. Naruto was about to put his 2 cents in when a presence came onto the field and they all turned to see Handra in all his glory. Despite the fact that there is no way for a snake to not look menacing, he was certainly making an effort of it. Good day to you all, chieftains. I, Handra, humbly ask that you forgive me for arriving late. Don't worry, Lord Handra. You arrived exactly when you meant to. And that just happened to be right on the time we set. Now then I would ask all the chiefs to state their names and their affiliations. Gamabunta, boss of the Umtamayaboku toads. With me are my sons Gamakichi and Gamatatsu. They will act as my witnesses to this meeting. Katsuyu, mistress of the slugs. I have 2 of my subordinates with me acting as my witnesses. Handra, lord of the serpents. I have no witnesses, being a newly named lord, and I still have some opposition. And I am Uzumaki Naruto, king of the Fox realm. With me is my wife and Queen Uzumaki Ino. She will be my witness to this meeting. All the chiefs bowed to each other reverently, and as soon as they popped up, Handra looked toward Naruto. Forgive me for asking, Lord Naruto, but why are you not in your true form? It is in bad taste to put yourself beneath us when you stand on equal ground. Bunta snorted, and Naruto thought he heard him mumble something along the lines of "told you so," earning him glares from both Ino and Katsuyu. Naruto sighed and addressed Handra. I prefer this form, Lord Handra. It lets me have greater mobility and my power is not affected by it. I took the life of an 8-tailed elder when I arrived in this form. Trust me when I say it is not an act of disrespect toward you. It is simply my preferred form. Very well. Forgive me for interrupting. You may continue. Don't feel the need to apologize so much, Lord Handra. We are all equals here. We're just here to discuss an alliance between our realms and people. That's all. Then why have you asked me here, Lord Naruto? It is no secret that the toads and slugs have been at odds with the serpents for a while now. I did not think that you would want an enemy at this meeting. That is precisely why I wanted you here most of all. The petty infighting has gone on long enough. Bunta's enemy Manda is dead, and therefore he has no reason really to hate the snakes anymore. Katsuyu is an ally of Bunta's and therefore would side with him, although there was no love lost between her people and the snakes either. Manda really made a mess out of things. The feud between the Sannin didn't help either. Bunta nodded his head and put his webbed feet inside his sleeves. That is true. While Manda and I did not get along, I personally hold no enmity toward you, Handra. I am willing to bury the hatchet with the snakes as long as they do not fight my people. I as well, Handra, will not fight you if you do not strike first. Handra looked from one to the other and then back at Naruto. I accept those terms. They are reasonable and fair. However, I wish to know what you get out of this, Lord Naruto. I get the satisfaction of knowing that my comrades are all friendly. We are all summons of the Leaf Village and therefore we should not fight. As you suspect, however, there are other underlying motives for my calling this meeting. And those would be? I want you to guarantee me that if the Uchiha calls you, you will not fight a loyal Konoha nin. Sasuke is a greedy, manipulative bastard and he will not hesitate to use you for his dirty work. You seem to be an honorable being, Handra, and I would like it if we could part here on amicable terms. I would like that as well. I do not have any wish to fight those I deem worthy of my loyalty. I was not impressed with my summoner when I was called forth that day. He exudes an aura of malice and evil. Manda was such a being, and I was shaken every time I came into contact with him. I agree not to be hostile towards Leaf Nin. That's good, because my son is soon to be a ninja along with his 2 half-siblings. I would like it very much if you swear never to help Sasuke where they are concerned. Your son? The boy who hugged you that day? I see. I will not help him harm your family. In fact, I am currently thinking of reviewing whether or not that man deserves to be summoner of the snakes. You have another who would love to be chief summoner. Ah yes, the Enka woman. She is eccentric, to say the least. I have been summoned by her several times since Manda would not allow her to call him. She is scary for a human. The other 3 summons threw their heads back and roared with laughter. Calling Anko scary was an understatement. Ino giggled to herself and scooted closer to Naruto. She didn't like snakes even if it was a friendly one. Gamabunta finally got himself under control and wiped a tear from his eye. Ah, that was good. I tell you though, Handra, for sheer eccentricity you can't beat Rock Lee, my summoner. That boy is weird. He has a good heart, but he is just plain weird. And I want to take my sword to those eyebrows every time I see him. Indeed. My summoner Haruno Sakura is a bit off-kilter as well. She talks to herself at times. It's quite disturbing. What about you, Naruto? Naruto grinned and pulled Ino closer. My summoner is strange too. Why just the other day she tackled me and... Before he could say another word Ino hit him in the jaw sending him to his back. She was flushed red and bowed quickly to the other chiefs. I'm very sorry. He can be a handful sometimes. Handra sniffed the air and looked at the Queen of Foxes. You smell. A little bit. Strange Lady Ino. Are you perhaps in the season? Ino blushed further and turned away quickly shaking her head. Handra tilted his head quizzically and turned to the other two summons. Correct me if I'm wrong, honored chieftains, but does she not give off pheromones like one that is in heat? Bunta had been trying to hold in his laughter the whole time. His two sons however did not have the composure he did and were howling at the top of their lungs. Naruto sat back up quickly and pulled Ino to his lap where she hid her face in his shoulder. Now Ino, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a purely biological thing. And yes, Lord Handra, to answer your question, she is in heat. Katsuyu looked at her thoughtfully and nodded her head. Tell me, Lady Ino, will this be your first child? Ino simply stared into Naruto's shoulder but her eyes cut to Katsuyu. I see. I believe you should talk to Lady Tsunade or Lady Sakura about the birth process. It would benefit you. Ino suddenly shouted out over the clearing. Why is it that everyone speaks as if I'm already pregnant? Katsuyu and Gamabunta simply stared at her. They'd been around a long time and knew, they just knew when someone was pregnant. It was the aura and scent they gave off. Ino didn't want to hear that though. Unfortunately for her, Handra was a snake of honor and deemed it his task to tell her. Lady Ino, you are pregnant though. I can smell it on you that you are with child. I'm certain my fellow chieftains can as well. Allow me to congratulate you on that. Ino sat stunned in Naruto's lap. For several minutes the chiefs talked amongst themselves, the business already out of the way, and discussed what they did in their separate realms to keep their subordinates in line. Handra found this especially helpful since some of the snakes were not very forthcoming with him being the chief. Suddenly Ino's eyes lit up and she tackled Naruto in a monstrous hug. Oh my god, I'm pregnant. I'm gonna be a mother. I love you. Naruto simply held his wife as she continued to blubber into his neck and looked at the other chiefs for a bit of help. They merely looked at him with smug looks. Bunta smirked and puffed on his pipe as Gamakichi and Gamatatsu looked on their shoulders shaking with unheard laughter. Congratulations, brat. I hope that those kids of yours are twice the hellion you were, so you know what being a father is all about. I'm a father already, thank you very much. I know how to raise children. Gamakichi came over and slapped him on the shoulder good-naturedly. Yeah bro, but Hikaru's a human. You're going to be dealing with full-blooded demon children. Foxes at that. You're going to have your hands full. Remember how hyperactive you were? Times that by 10. Naruto paled and looked at Ino, who was still blabbering about motherhood and how great it was going to be. A thought suddenly came to him and it made him shudder. Don't foxes have litters? He didn't share that thought with Ino at that moment. Scene change, the rest of the talk went without incident. It was hard not to be upbeat and optimistic with each other when Ino was chatting with Katsuyu about motherhood. The slug was graciously patient with the chatterbox and soon declared her departure back to her own realm. She swore her allegiance to their pact and left. Handra as well was happy that he had come. His own realm was in a bit of a bind right now, but with the support of his new allies he was sure he could claim his rightful place and end all the senseless bickering amongst his people. And as sure as his name was Handra, he swore never to aid Sasuke in any of his endeavors against the Uzumakis. If the question was ever put to him, he would revoke the Uchiha summoner contract immediately. He bade the Uzumakis and Gamabunta a good day and slunk back off to his realm. Gamabunta puffed on his pipe and looked down at Naruto. Tell me brat, why did you not invite the other Konoha summons? You know Enma, the dogs, the turtles. Why aren't they here too? Naruto struck a thoughtful pose and was quiet for a while. I guess. Because I don't know them all that well. I know the apes were Sarutobi's personal summon, but I've never seen one. I don't even know if Konohamaru can summon one or not. As for the dogs and turtles, I don't know who their bosses are, so I didn't want to call for them. Besides, if they're powerful, we'll meet them one day. So old frog, what do you think? Bunta blew out another ring of smoke and contemplated his answer. The brat had grown in recent years and he was grateful for that. He couldn't stay an idiot forever after all. I think you did well here, Naruto. Not many would have dared call a meeting of chieftains. But then again, you never went by conventional standards, have you? Bunta sucked on his pipe again and looked down at his sons. So what do you two think of Naruto's kingdom? Gamakichi looked up at his father and grinned. I like it. It's not as wet as ours, but it's nice. Really green. Hey bro, think I can visit here often? I don't see why not. If your father makes you the official go-between of our two realms, I think you could come and go as you please. Just don't step on any baby foxes and you should be good. I wouldn't do that. Unless they were really annoying. Gamakichi. Kidding pops, kidding. Sure thing Naruto, I'd love to be the go-between. By the way, aren't you kind of calm considering you just found out your wife is pregnant? Naruto shrugged and grinned at his friend. I've already had one kid. The novelty of pregnancy kind of wore off. What could possibly be different? Gamabunta smirked. Tell me brat, how was Ino when she was a human in biological matters? What you mean, like period and all that shit? She was like any other girl except she was Ino, so she was really bitchy. Uh-huh. Considering things of a sexual nature, how was she? Bunta. Geez man, try to show a little restraint. Let's see. She was a wild woman when she was mortal. Really, really wild. Like above the norm. Overabundant sex drive. And now that she's queen of the foxes? Well, she's a lot worse when she wants it. God, the other day we got into a scuffle, rolled down the stairs, and it turned her on. Her hormones are crazy as a demon. I don't. The smirk on Bunta's face got bigger and bigger, and Gamakichi and Gamatatsu's laughs got louder and louder. Oh my god. Bunta, she's going to kill me during pregnancy, isn't she? I remember how Sakura blamed me for her condition. And she had super strength. Ino's going to slit my goddamn throat in my sleep once she gets fat. She'll suffocate me. And that's if I survive all the mood swings and random wantings for sex. Oh man, what am I gonna do? Run away? Stay in the Fox Kingdom? Suck it up and act like a man brat. You've got at least one on the way now. I don't know how being human will have messed with your demon physiology, but your woman is pregnant and you've got 9 months of hell. You know, I can hear you guys clear across the clearing. It's not like you can whisper very well, Bunta. Naruto tensed and turned slowly to find his wife with her arms crossed and her toe tapping a rhythm into the dirt. He cracked a half-hearted grin and quickly wondered how he was going to get out of this. Hey honey. You sure look pretty. Have I told you I love you lately? Nice try, jackass. It's my first time being pregnant and all I wanted was a little understanding and love from my supportive husband, and I can't even get that. You don't love me at all. Naruto looked at her in disbelief. Surely it was too early for mood swings yet. Ino was just being her usual manipulative self in order to get something. He sighed and put his arm around her shoulders. She shrugged him away and continued her crocodile tears. Naruto wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close. Okay Ino, what do you want? I know for a fact you're just acting. She turned and looked at him with wide eyes. Her act had always worked in the past. Naruto grinned and tapped the side of his head. Ino cursed in her mind. Damn, he probably heard that too. Sure did, babe. You can't fool me no matter how cute you look when you're pouting. Fine. As soon as we get back we're going to see my parents and tell them I'm pregnant. Can't you even pretend to be happy that we're having a baby? Naruto smiled at her gently and pulled her in close, kissing her forehead. Oh Ino, I'm ecstatic that we're having a baby. It's just I've been a parent before, so I've been here before. It's all new to you and I love that. I'm sure you'll look lovely when you're pregnant. He sat there holding her for several moments with his eyes closed. So what, I'm not pretty or lovely right now? He didn't open his eyes or twitch a bit. Don't ruin the moment, sweetie. Aw, aren't you two the cutest thing? Get the fuck out of here, frog. You're ruining the moment. Ino. What? I'm sorry, but Gamakichi's being an asshole. Naruto sighed and turned back to his friend who was chuckling like crazy. Kichi, do you mind? I was in the middle of a heartfelt talk. No problem, bro. I'll talk to you later. Ino, it was good seeing you again. And congratulations. Bye Kichi. We'll see you later. As Gamakichi hopped away to catch up to his father and brother, Naruto looked back down to the woman in his lap and smiled. Ino was contentedly rubbing her belly as if trying to feel the life growing within her. Naruto placed his hand on top of hers and kissed her. You'll be a great mom, Ino. Now let's go inform the council and go back home. Sure, just as soon as you lose those pants. Ino. Strip. Now. Blame it on the hormones. Ino, everyone can see. No one can see us. Everyone's gone. Ino. Gimme your wee-wee now. Scene change. After informing the entire realm that the queen was pregnant and dealing with a multitude of ecstatic well-wishing foxes, Naruto was glad to relax in the palace for the night before going home in the morning. As he lay beside Ino with her snuggling against him, he thought back to earlier that day and burst into giggles. Ino looked up at him sleepily and yawned. "What's so funny? Gimme your wee-wee?" Ino looked at him and blushed before punching him in the arm. "What? I was horny and I didn't hear you complaining. That's because I was laughing too hard to defend myself. Get some sleep, asshole. We're going home tomorrow and we're talking to my parents." She snuggled back into his side and closed her eyes when she felt him shaking. She cracked one eye open and saw him staring back at her with a big-ass grin. Wee. Go to sleep, you fucking stupid ass. It's a good thing he was the king, otherwise he would have been sleeping on the couch. Scene change. As they appeared back in the Uzumaki household, Naruto suddenly felt a sense of apprehension hit him. This wasn't like telling her parents that he wanted to marry her. They could have rejected him then. This was telling them that they had a demonic grandchild on the way. Oh well, as long as it was cute, Yuka probably wouldn't care. Hopefully. Tsunade and Sakura took the news as well as most women do. They were bouncing up and down like kids on a sugar high. Hikaru was happy to have another sibling and wanted to know what it was going to be. Naruto chuckled and told him they wouldn't know that for a while yet. Hikaru was disappointed but otherwise happy. Jugo and Karen didn't know what to think but were happy for Naruto and Ino regardless. Naruto sat explaining things to the kids while the three women had girl talk. So Ino, how does it feel to be a mother? It feels good, Lady Tsunade. I think I'll like being a mother. I'm already a mom, but starting from scratch will be a new experience. I can't wait. Tsunade saw Sakura wince when Ino said she was already a mom, but it was the truth. Nothing could be done about that. Forgetting her apprentice's uncomfortability for the moment, she asked about Ino's parents. I don't know yet. We haven't gone to tell them. We did just get back. A predatory gleam came into Tsunade's eyes and she grinned slyly. Well then we'd better go tell them, hadn't we? We? Yes, we. I want to see how Inoichi reacts to being a grandfather. How do you think Mom will act? Tsunade shrugged. Probably the same way me and Sakura did. She'll squeal a bit, give you lots of hugs, and then she'll threaten Naruto. Sakura smirked and stood up. Oh yeah, I definitely have to see this. Well, let's gather the kids up and go grandparent hunting. Scene change. Naruto was nervous the whole trek to the Yamanaka household. He hadn't really had to tell Sakura's parents when Hikaru was conceived. She didn't want him there when she told them. This was a new development for him too, and even though they had told him they wanted grandbabies, he wasn't sure how they'd take it. He just wasn't comfortable at the moment. Ino was bouncing up and down as they walked down the road. She couldn't wait to see the look on her parents' faces when she told them the news. Things were definitely looking up. As the group approached the door of the Yamanaka home, Tsunade and Sakura were barely able to contain their giggles. This would be worth watching. Ino greeted her mother with a hug and her father with a kiss on the cheek. The women all accepted Yuka's offer of tea and sat down on the various chairs and couches to watch the show. Inoichi sat beside his wife and Naruto sat beside Ino. If Sakura and Tsunade would have had popcorn, it would have been perfect. The kids sat not really knowing what was happening. The foxes were intrigued about the whole situation. Usually the Vulpine did not make such a big deal out of children. Kids were a blessing, but they were also a part of life. The hullabaloo surrounding the whole event was strange. Yamanaka Yuka was suspicious of her daughter's arrival with her husband and friends in tow. The last time a get-together this large involved her daughter and son-in-law. The two were getting married. Naturally, she wanted answers. Ino dear, not that I mind you coming here because I love when you do, but why are you all here? You and Naruto aren't getting a divorce, are you? Mom. No, we aren't getting a divorce. We just have something to tell you and Daddy, something important. Inoichi sat on the edge of his seat. His daughter never talked about important things to them. She was much too secretive and private. Ino watched her father and waited until he took a sip of tea to drop her bomb. I'm pregnant. Inoichi choked on his tea and began to choke, prompting Naruto to clap him on the back to loosen up his esophagus. Yuka launched herself at her daughter and began hugging her relentlessly while crying something unintelligible about grandbabies. Once Inoichi caught his breath, he slapped Naruto on the back, shook his hand and crushed him in a hug. Poor Naruto had no clue what to do and just stood there like a statue. So Naruto finally lived up to expectations, eh? I thought it would take you longer than a year to get the ball rolling, but you barely made it. I was joking about the year thing, you know. There wasn't any reason to rush. It wasn't like that, sir. Inoichi, please. Naruto, I'm your father-in-law. At least treat me like one of the guys. All right then, Inoichi. It's not like we planned this. Most don't. But Ino's different now, you understand. She's a demoness and therefore her physiology is different. Her biological clock is different. She's been in heat and that pretty much guarantees that she'll get pregnant. Inoichi paled at the implications. If Ino came into heat every year, Naruto would have to lock her away in a dark room until it passed. Or invest in adamantium chastity belts. Otherwise the village would be overrun by little Uzumakis. He put on a smile for his son-in-law and clapped his hand on the young man's shoulder. Just how often does she come into heat? Naruto shrugged and turned to look at the hugfest going on between Ino and a blubbering Yuka. He shuddered, wondering when the woman was going to latch onto him. We don't know. A human has never turned demon that we know of, so we're kind of a test group. Hopefully it won't be every year. I don't know how I'd keep her off me if that happened. Keep her off you say? So it's been difficult? Naruto stared at Inoichi like he'd grown another head and laughed his ass off. You have no idea how awkward it is discussing the particulars of my sex life with my father-in-law. Yes, it's difficult. Ino emits a pheromone that is like a drug to me. No matter how much I try to resist, I simply can't. And even when I do resist, she... Naruto mumbled the last part and Inoichi leaned in, asking what he'd said. I said she just takes it anyway, okay? Inoichi tried not to laugh, he really did, but the thought of Ino overpowering the most powerful demon alive just so she could have some nookie was a funny thought indeed. The Yamanakas were a very open family when it came to marital life and weren't ashamed to discuss things. It probably came with being a family of mind-walkers, but then again it could be their very nature. So, my little girl who weighs all of 110 pounds soaking wet is able to just take it? That's rich. It's not funny, man. She's freaking scary when she gets like that. Tell you what, let's play a little game. Imagine your wife. She's in the mood and she wants to play. Now let's say you don't want to give it up. What's she gonna do? Whine and cry until I give in. Okay, that's how Ino used to be. Must run in the family. Now she fights me until she gets into my pants. Literally fights me. The other day I wouldn't let her have any, so she tackled me. We tussled on the floor, by which I mean we kicked and punched and bit and scratched, rolled down a flight of stairs, and it turned her on. Inoichi's eyes went wide. He knew that demons were a rough sort, but damn. He felt sorry for his son-in-law. Inoichi was about to reply to that until a weeping bundle of happiness known as Yuka tackled Naruto and was crying into his chest. It was hard to make out her muffled words, but baby thank and happy were among the only legible ones. Inoichi hauled his wife off Naruto and Ino helped her husband back to his feet. Yuka immediately latched herself onto Ino again, crying out how happy she was to have grandbabies finally. Naruto and Inoichi decided to celebrate by hitting the bar and getting stone-cold drunk. Shikaku and Shuza were already there and were surprised to see Inoichi with his son-in-law in tow. They welcomed the boy with open arms, as drinking partners were always in high demand among shinobi. And it wasn't every day you got to drink with a demon lord. Shikaku finished off his saucer of sake and turned to Inoichi. So why are the two of you in here? It isn't often you bring guests in Noichi. We're here to celebrate my becoming a grandparent. Barkeep. Around for my friends and I, Chusa and Shikaku were ecstatic and heartily congratulated the expectant father and grandfather. Inoichi had wanted grandchildren forever it seemed and had been wondering if Ino would ever get married before Naruto came along. Soon enough all the men were sloshed with the exception of Naruto. No amount of liquor was enough to get him tipsy. Inoichi turned bleary eyes to Naruto and poured himself another drink. Hey Naruto, I've been meaning to ask you. Are my grandbabies gone be human or are they going to be all fuzzy? Poor Inoichi was soon cursing after Naruto spit his drink all over him. Shikaku and Chusa laughed at the whole proceedings. Naruto wasn't one to let a jab go though. He took a sip of his drink and faced Inoichi with a grin. I don't know. We still haven't figured out if she's having just one or a whole litter. It was Naruto's turn to curse that time. Chapter 18. It had been nearly 6 months since they'd told everyone that Ino was pregnant. Naruto was pleasantly surprised that Ino's parents took her being pregnant so well. He chalked it up to their being a very open family and wanting desperately for grandchildren. He did think it a little odd that Inoichi was so open about sexual matters regarding his daughter, but Naruto was never one to look a gift horse in the mouth. Besides, he had other things to worry about. The fact that Ino was pregnant didn't bother him. Ever since he was little, Naruto wanted a large family. What worried him was that he didn't know how her pregnancy would go. Since they both had a human background, he suspected she would go the full 9 months and give birth to a child with fox-like traits. But there was no way to confirm this until she gave birth. There was so much to do and so little time to do it. Being king meant he could come and go as he pleased in the fox realm. That was a definite boon. In the past few months he had left much of the ruling to the council with the knowledge that if they got too power-hungry he'd do something unpleasant to them. No one wanted to challenge the king, so the fox realm was being run as a tight ship. Negotiations with the other bosses had been absolutely great. They all had emissaries going between realms relaying messages and offering to help one another with whatever problems they might have. Naruto smiled as he lay in bed with his arms behind his head. Things were going so smoothly, and if he had his way they'd go smoothly for years to come. The kids' training was great. They all caught on to their respective styles quickly and were fast becoming extremely talented in several fields. Jugo was deadly with his Muay Thai and had obliterated several training posts. His knees and elbows were like iron, and once he had you in range there wasn't much you could do to stop him. Karen was like fluid grace come to life. The little girl had developed a hard head too, and those headbutts she used were dynamite. She'd knocked Lee for a loop one time. And that's saying something. Lee was loopy enough already, there was no need to add to that. Naruto's smile widened as he thought of his son. Hikaru had come the furthest, but then again he had several years on his siblings. His feral freestyle was nearly on a level with the Inuzuka's own bestial style, but he lacked the pure physicality they had. Hikaru focused more on quick strikes and decapitating moves. Kiba had begun coming over frequently, bringing Hinata and their daughter with him to gauge Hikaru's progress. Kiba kept his level down to that of a genin's, but he was having trouble keeping up with Hikaru. Not to mention his new dog, a pup of Akamaru's, wasn't fully trained yet and was still in the silly puppy stage. He nearly had his ass handed to him. Naruto heard a sigh beside him and turned his head to see Ino snuggle her way further into his side. He chuckled and reached down to rub her swollen belly. She let out a contented moan at the contact and nuzzled her face into his shoulder. He had been correct when he had guessed her hormones would be more out of whack. But instead of becoming more outrageous and outspoken than she already was, Ino became somewhat meeker and housewife-like the further into her pregnancy she got. She wanted to be petted and massaged all the time. Basically, she wanted to be treated like a queen. Naruto pulled his hand away from her belly, eliciting a dissatisfied groan from his wife until he began to rub and massage again with his tails. He thanked Kami for the useful appendages. They saved him a lot of trouble over the past few months. As Ino drifted further into sleep, his thoughts turned back to the past again. Hinata had been a delight when she came over, and her daughter loved to play with the kids. She had a small crush on Jugo, and the little boy had no idea what to do. He'd asked Hikaru how he handled Kaoru, and the pinky blonde just shrugged. "I don't know how to handle her. She pretty much does what she wants. I'm telling you, Dad cursed me with bad luck with women. When Ino heard that she had brained the poor child with one of her tails while telling him that Kaoru was a sweet girl and he'd better give her a chance. Naruto chuckled again as he remembered how the boy had finally conceded and promised to give her a chance while swearing to find a way to get back at his mom. Ino's content purring beside him brought him to other thoughts. Sasuke had not tried to cause any more problems since that one day, and that made Naruto worry. He knew that the Uchiha was a pride-driven individual and wouldn't let the slight to his honor, however little there is, slide so easily. He'd have to be on guard all the time. His foxes had been running the kingdom quite well, and messengers popped up all the time to bring him a piece of news or to get an opinion on something. Oftentimes it was in the middle of the market or while he was training the children or when they were at a restaurant. It became commonplace, and for most of Konoha was not an issue anymore. Foxes popped up all the time. Some couldn't find him right off the bat and asked civilians if they'd seen him. He'd find them playing with the local kids at a playground or eating at a restaurant or one time drinking in a bar. The Vulpine were an eclectic bunch. He turned to his wife and saw that she was now on her back enjoying the ministrations of his tails in her sleep. A devilish thought crossed his mind. She had forbidden him from putting his little buddy anywhere near her crotch while she was pregnant, and he had to resort to his own devices or if Ino was feeling it, a good blowjob every once in a while. Those were few and far between, however, since she had hit her 5th month. If he wasn't so loyal to her, he could have had concubines in the fox realm. He shuddered at that, though. He might be their king, but he still had a stigma against furry sex. Ino was having a really good sleep. Something kept rubbing her swollen tummy, and it felt really good. If she hadn't sworn off sex until after the baby was born, she'd be all over Naruto right now. The rubbing wasn't helping, though. It was making her hot, and if it kept up, she was going to need release. Badly. She hadn't had any in so long it was about to bring her to tears. Naruto watched as Ino began to squirm and moan under the touch of his tails and made up his mind that even if she claimed she didn't want it, she needed that release. She was like an engine about to blow. He peeled back the covers. The sheets were soaked, and it wasn't from sweat. The smell from her was intoxicating, he just had to have a taste. He leant down slowly and settled between her legs. Drawing his breath in, he blew slowly across her folds. Ino's eyes snapped open when she felt the warm air blow across her. She tried to sit up but found herself held down by 4 of his tails while the other 5 continued to massage her belly. She moaned loudly and tried to break free. Naruto grinned up at her from between her legs. "Morning, honey. Feeling all right?" "Yes, I'm feeling great. Can you let me go now?" "But honey, look at you down here. You're an absolute mess. It would be wrong of me not to clean up since I'm already down here." "Naruto, please. Don't." "Oh, Ino, it's all right. Trust me. Now you just relax, let me handle everything." "But the baby. Trust me, he won't know. And you need this, sweetie." He kissed her on the clit and licked it. Ino groaned lustily and threw her head back, panting heavily. "See? You've held back too long. Now lay back and enjoy." He held on to his promise of not putting anything in her, but he never swore he wouldn't torture her outer areas. He continued his ritual of kissing and licking her anywhere and everywhere, waiting for her initial release. Ino was on fire. She couldn't move, she couldn't speak, all she could do was pant and write in sweet bliss. The agony of not having come in over a month was so painful. She gripped the bedsheets, nearly tearing them to pieces as the knot in her stomach grew more and more painful until she threw her head back and screamed wordlessly as she came. Naruto knew his wife had been backed up, but when she essentially flooded the bed, he was, for lack of a better word, stupefied. His face was literally awash with her scent, and it was driving him crazy. He sat there licking the essence off his face as Ino sat up in bed, free of his tails, panting like no tomorrow. She knew that going without release was a bad idea, but she hadn't known exactly how bad. That was the hardest she'd ever come, and she felt spectacular. As she got her breath back, she looked at her husband, who was currently cleaning off what he could, and wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him in for a kiss. She could taste herself on his lips. She tasted sweet like nectar. As their tongues battled back and forth, she found his manhood and gripped it tightly, making him moan. "I think it's my turn to say good morning to you now." Naruto just watched as she leaned down, and soon his entire being was inside of her. His hands flew to her hair and began to wind his fingers through her golden locks. Just as he was there, she slid off him with a pop and gripped his base tightly. Not yet. I want you to tell me every time you're about to blow because you don't get to until the 5th time. Understand? Ugh. Ino, don't do this to me this early in the morning. She didn't say anything and went back to bobbing up and down. Soon after his first 4 attempts, she finally let him come and nearly drowned trying to get it all down. She swallowed it all with a big gulp and collapsed on her pillow, Naruto right behind her just as spent. Ino rolled to her side and kissed him deeply. Didn't I say not to do that until the baby was born? Yeah, but you wouldn't make it till the baby's born. You needed that. She sighed and leaned against his shoulder again as he wrapped his tails around her. Yeah, I did. Remember what today is? Yep, it's the kids' first day of school. Think we should get up and get things ready for them? Nah, let's lay here a bit longer. You kind of wore me out. Naruto chuckled and tickled her with a tail. So I was finally able to wear you out, huh? Maybe we should make all our sessions a month apart. Don't even think about it, buddy. I happen to like what you do. You just wait till the baby's here. I have a lot of lost time to make up for. Naruto sighed and sat up, bringing Ino up with him. Since we're not going back to sleep and we don't have to get up for a while, let me give you a massage. Will you massage my feet and ankles? They kind of hurt. He just nodded and flipped her around to begin his husbandly duties. Scene change. It was a good thing Naruto had installed those silencing seals when Ino had moved in with him, otherwise that entire side of Konoha would have heard her scream. The couple finally made it to the bathroom and got washed up before starting the day. It wouldn't do to have to explain to the children why they smelled of sex so much. They dressed in their normal clothing and walked downstairs to find everyone already in the kitchen. Tsunade and Sakura were preparing breakfast in the large kitchen while the kids talked excitedly about going to school finally. The foxes sat and watched from their various perches and waited to have their breakfast. Everyone turned and watched as the king and queen came down the stairs, and Sakura leaned into Tsunade and whispered about how Ino was glowing. The older blonde snickered and nodded her head. Ino glared at the two and took her seat. Naruto sat beside her and smiled at the children. So you guys ready to go to the academy? You excited? A chorus of yes reached his ears and he laughed. You say that now, wait until Irika has you studying about history and theory. You'll really hate it then. Naruto, don't try to scare them. Don't listen to him, kids, he's just jealous because he sucked at schoolwork. Small talk was exchanged as the family ate breakfast, and soon they all set off for the academy. The foxes had eaten several steaks that Naruto had bought for them and were appreciative of their king's generosity. They made quite the procession going down the street. Most smiled and bowed to the royal family and bade Sakura and Tsunade good morning. Naruto sighed happily as he wrapped his arm around Ino's waist. He loved walking through the village now. When he was younger, it was a fight for survival. Ino was proud of her stepson and her best friend's children. They were all going to do great, and with the training they'd been given would be miles above everyone else. She could only hope that Sasuke wouldn't cause any problems or try to kidnap the kids again, because she was fairly certain that Naruto would kill him this time. Not that that bothered her, she just didn't want to fight those who thought Sasuke was on a level of his own, those who worshipped him like he was a god. She leaned further into Naruto's embrace and entwined one of her tails with one of his. Tsunade watched her favorite blonde as he walked with his wife and couldn't help but feel a little jealous. She'd never had that since Dan, and even though she loved Jiraiya, she'd never admit it. She had too much fun with him as it was. She'd simply content herself with looking after Hikaru and whatever else little bundle of joy, or bundles, that Naruto and Ino produced. Yes, she'd fill her role of grandmother quite well, although sharing with Yuka might be a problem. Ah well, if she wanted her grandbaby, she was tough enough to get it. Sakura walked along the path, glancing down proudly at her children. She might no longer be the chief woman in Hikaru's life, but Juko and Karen looked to her for advice and support, and she was happy to give it. She looked to her children guardians and found Shin bouncing along happily, trying to get Karen psyched up. That fox was an endless bundle of energy. He reminded her of Lee. She still had yet to take him up on his offer of a date, but perhaps it was time to get back on the scene. Lee was a good man and the kids loved him. It wouldn't be a hard transition. Jin kept throwing glances at his over-exuberant counterpart and sighed audibly. Shin was too easily excitable. He'd brought Karen's level of confidence up though, and that was a blessing. Jin's problem lay in getting the hot-headed Jugo who was talking animatedly to his siblings to calm down and think clearly. It had been a battle but he'd finally managed. Why couldn't the boy be as well-behaved as Hikaru? Jin sighed again. The reason Hikaru was well-behaved was because Jin Maki made no bones about punishing him if he got out of line. Jin knew he had the authority but that Sakura woman was a lot of trouble and he didn't want to have to explain bruises to her. So troublesome. The academy finally came into view and they entered its yard to find dozens of children being escorted by their parents. Naruto looked around and became a little nostalgic. There was his swing, the one that used to keep him company when he was down. The group watched as he crossed the grounds to it and sat down, his weight slightly straining the old ropes. He made a mental note to bring some new rope for it. He waved the kids over and they stood in front of him. Okay kiddos, here we are. Today's the day. I want all three of you to be good, you understand? Irika-sensei isn't one to be messed with. He'll punish you if you get out of line. Now I want you to pay close attention to him, okay? I know that you're all stronger than most academy students, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't respect them. They're here to learn just like you are. Do not use those fighting styles I taught you until the exams or if it's a last resort. You can seriously hurt someone with them. Don't show off any of your jutsus either. Just do the ones they ask you to use and move on. We'll continue to practice your jutsus at home. There's no need to show off. Okay, now go on. Have fun. The three smiled at him and bounded off to a group of kids introducing themselves. The adults watched as the girls stared at Hikaru with starry eyes and tried to touch his pinky blonde hair. Naruto chuckled as Hikaru's fan club began to develop. Jugo and Karen tried to help their brother but it was to no avail. The madness had begun. The only thought going through Hikaru's mind was Keiru's going to be so pissed when she finds out. Jin, Maki and Shin nodded to their regents and bounded after the children to the squeals of delight from the kunoichi wannabes. Maki and Jin hated the attention while Shin seemed to thrive off it. But then again, Karen had been cuddling him for quite a while now. He was used to affectionate attention. Naruto let out a happy sigh and the group of adults walked inside to find Irika. Irika had been having a good morning so far. It was the start of a new year with new faces and he even had Naruto and Sakura's children this time around. He shifted through the papers with his prospective students and looked up when he heard the door open. He smiled broadly when his surrogate son and family walked in. Naruto. What a pleasant surprise. Here to see off your offspring, are you? Yep, sure are. We just came to let you know they're here. If they get out of line, feel free to bust them down a level or two. I'll be sure to do that. I assume you're also here about something else, however? Of course. I have foxes guarding the kids. If Sasuke tries anything, they'll let me know. If that bastard tries anything, I expect you to let me know immediately, Irika. I won't put up with any of his bullshit. If I weren't so concerned with how a self-proclaimed guardian killing the Hokage would go over, he'd have been dead at the wedding. He needs to live for a little while longer though. I see. And you three, what do you think? Ino smiled and wrapped her arms around Naruto's waist from behind. Irika looked at her bulging belly and smiled. Another Naruto running around. Great, that's all the world needs. I'll go along with whatever Naruto wants. So will I, me too. All right then. If Sasuke tries anything, I'll notify you immediately. But what about when they graduate? He has final say on the teams, you know. Naruto's eyes hardened and his hand slapped down onto the desktop. Trust me, sensei, he will allow our children to be on a team together and Ino will be their team leader. Or he won't have his children graduate and be on a team at all. Since they live in my house, they fall under my jurisdiction and I won't have them split up so he can manipulate them. You realize, of course, how unorthodox this is. Favoritism is not looked upon kindly in the academy. Everyone scowled at Irika when he said that and he immediately figured out that he had said something wrong. Naruto tried to be calm when he spoke. Favoritism isn't looked upon kindly? Don't make me laugh, Irika. This academy and this village are all about favoritism. If someone's farts so much as smells like it might be from a clan, this village will bow to them. I don't want my children raised in such an environment. I want them to build their own legacy, not use mine to springboard themselves to higher levels. Irika was sweating bullets. Naruto hadn't used any killing intent, but then again he didn't have to. He was an imposing enough character with his tails flailing about angrily behind him. Ino was no better, and both Tsunade and Sakura were cracking their knuckles. Iruka sighed in defeat and held his hands up in surrender. I'll do it. Geez Naruto, I thought we were close. You don't have to resort to threats. I didn't threaten you, Iruka. I just persuaded you with my awesomeness. Even Ino winced at the lameness of her husband's joke. Deciding they had traumatized the poor man enough for one day, Ino latched her arm onto her husband's and began to drag him away. Sorry for the inconvenience, Iruka-sensei. I'll just take him home now. Teach them well. Come on you two, don't you have to be at the hospital soon? Sakura and Tsunade both looked at their watches and cursed under their breath. Since she retired and Sakura divorced Sasuke, they had taken up jobs at the hospital to pass the time. Unfortunately for them, Shizune ran a tight ship and they'd probably be punished for being late. Oh well, shit happens. They bolted out the door past the pregnant woman and a grumbling Naruto. Ino knew what to do when her husband was in a bad mood, and frankly she was getting hungry again. Eating for two was, in the words of Shika, troublesome. She leaned her head on his shoulder as they walked and asked as sweetly as she could. Hey honey? You wanna get some ramen? Naruto's eyes immediately lit up and he scooped her into his arms, running past all the children while shouting about Ichiraku's. The 3 children and foxes under his care hung their heads in embarrassment and shame. When asked if they knew who that was, they tried to deny any knowledge of the weirdo. A stern cough from Genmaki made them all fess up, however. Scene change. That evening was a grand affair at the Uzumaki household. Naruto made some of his famous barbecue and all his friends were invited. Everyone was having a splendid time, asking the children how the first day of school was, catching up and generally having a good time. Shikamaru held Chuji back from the barbecue while Ino was chatting it up with Tenten, Sakura and Hinata about kids. Kiba was roughhousing with the kids while Guy and Lee were challenging each other to absurd stunts. Lee had called Gamakichi so he could say hello to Hikaru and congratulate him. Tsunade and Jiraiya were engrossed in their own little drinking game while Penny tried to goad Shikamaru into a game of chess. He would have complied if Chuji had behaved. Naruto was enjoying himself while he cooked. Having clones help was such a wonderful thing. Cutting the potatoes for potato salad, making a garden salad, baking rolls, slathering barbecue sauce on the several hundred pounds of meat. They were most useful. He had finally allowed Chuji a plate so that Shikamaru could rest and play a game with Penny. Suddenly he heard cries of youth and "What a youthful fox you are," and slapped his forehead, dragging his hand down over his face. He'd forgotten never to introduce Shin to Guy and Lee. Now they were all in deep shit. Luckily Sakura saw through the crisis by dragging the fox away from the green-clad taijutsu master and toad master despite Shin's cries of protest. And things were finally beginning to look normal. Shino showed up later with his wife in tow. She was a distant relation of his and was actually quite a looker if the body hid under her cloak was any indication. Naruto and the group said hello and ushered them in. Shino might not have shown it, but he was happy to be included. It wasn't often he got to socialize with those he considered friends. Niji showed up a little while later with Hanabi in tow. She was allowed to stay under the condition that she not be a stuck-up little bitch. Naruto never was one to mince words. Once everyone was there, Naruto hollered for them to come and get it, and it wasn't long before the food was gone. More small talk followed until everyone began to drift off with a promise to get together more often, especially if Naruto was cooking. With the first day of school over and done, the family retreated to their bedrooms to cap off the day. Scene change. While Ino was in the bathroom, Naruto took it upon himself to remove their stained sheets. He didn't want to sleep on them after that episode that morning. He had just got finished putting on the new sheets when hands appeared from behind him and a soft mouth began to nibble along his neckline. He groaned and tried to be a voice of reason. Ino, sweetie, as much as I can enjoy your enthusiasm, you've been on your feet all day and you need to rest. Let's go to sleep. She turned him around and looked him up and down. I want a repeat of this morning before we hit the hay. Are you denying me, Uzumaki Naruto? As your king and husband, yes, I am denying you. You need your rest. King's orders. He crawled under the covers, leaving a baffled Ino standing there. She narrowed her eyes and got in with a huff. She waited until his chest began to rise and fall with a slow rhythm before springing her plan. Naruto hadn't been asleep 5 minutes before he felt a familiar suction around him and his eyes flew open as he raised the covers. There was Ino looking up at him like the cat that swallowed the canary. Naruto glared at her. "Didn't I tell you no? Go to sleep, King's orders." Her retort was to leap onto his chest and give him a very sloppy kiss. Once she had him back under her power, she gave him a half-lidded look and grinned. "This is a mutiny. I'm in control here and I want a million-man march right into my mouth." He didn't have the strength or will to argue with her. Chapter 19. I'll kill you, Uzumaki Naruto. You hear me? I'll kill you, oh god it hurts. Naruto winced as he heard his wife holler through the double doors of the delivery room. At 8 months and 2 weeks the baby had decided that it didn't like being in Ino anymore and had made the decision to say hello to the world. Naruto was ecstatic that the child was finally coming, but the way Ino was screaming made him fear for his safety. The fact that Ino had tried to break his hand while she was holding it and had then tried to choke him wasn't influencing his decision to stay in the waiting room at all. He remembered back to when Sakura had been giving birth to Hikaru. Not being knowledgeable at all about babies or the birthing process, he had opted to watch from behind a screen. Once Hikaru was born and handed to Sakura, Naruto had made the mistake of pointing to her crotch and asking if it ever would go back to normal. That had been a horrible 6 months on the couch. He chuckled as he walked that path down memory lane, catching the attention of Inoichi. "So what are you going to call the baby? Thought of any names?" Naruto cracked one eye open and smiled at his father-in-law. "We ain't naming it Inoichi if that's what you're asking." "I wasn't suggesting that. I was just wondering if the two of you had come up with anything." "I haven't. I've already had a kid, so I thought Ino should have the honor of naming her first. Besides, I'm not bothering her if she's acting like this. Sakura wasn't this damn violent. Well, my little girl isn't exactly a mortal anymore. Maybe demons are more volatile when they're giving birth than humans are. Maybe. Or maybe that's just the way the women in her family act. Didn't you say Yuka tried to kill you with a hidden kunai while she was giving birth to Ino?" Inoichi shuddered and looked down the hall to where his wife was sitting chatting with Tsunade and Sakura the foxes all close by with the children. "Yeah, she did. It was scary as hell how that tiny woman had me cowering with fear. I usually don't scare easy. It comes with walking people's minds. But her. BRRR, man, I don't even want to think about it. I just can't believe the entire family is blonde. Hopefully the kid will have a different head of hair." "Why's that? Blonde is a good color. Not saying it ain't. I just would like to see a different color." Before the two could bicker any further, a nurse poked her head out the door and beckoned for Naruto. "The baby's here and doing fine. If you'd like to see the both of them." Naruto was gone from his chair so fast all Inoichi saw was an afterimage. "Well, here's hoping my grandchild looks cute at least." Scene change, so boy or girl? Tsunade had finally tired of the meaningless drivel that Sakura and Yuka were spouting out constantly about how cute babies were and this and that. Ugh, it was becoming most uncomfortable. Since she'd never had a child, she'd settled for mothering Naruto and Hikaru to death. Her fox Penny sat on the bench beside her purring as Tsunade slightly stroked her fur absent-mindedly. It wasn't often the fox allowed herself to be touched, but then again Tsunade wasn't said to have magic hands for nothing. Sakura looked pensive for once and put her finger to her chin, thinking about her answer. They'd all ran diagnostic jutsu on Ino over the months, but they weren't very good at telling what gender a child was. Especially in the still formative stages. Ino had said that she didn't want to know what the gender was and had forbade them exclusively from looking into the gender of the child. Sakura had pouted and Tsunade had given her a harsh look for being so childish. If there was one thing Tsunade couldn't stand, it was immaturity because of something silly. She had enough of that from Naruto in earlier years. "I think it's going to be a girl." Yuka shook her head and crossed her fingers. Despite desperately wanting a grandchild, she wanted a girl most of all. At least at first. She wanted a girl that she could doll up and act girly with. Someone she could dote on. Tsunade saw that both of them wanted girls and smirked. "I hope it's a boy." Sakura and Yuka both looked at her like she'd grown another head. Yuka cautiously asked her why that was, as she already had one grandson effectively. "Because boys cause more trouble, and I seriously think that any child of Naruto's would do this village good with their natural born trickster skills." How so? Why, Yuka, it's been so boring since Naruto became a respectable father figure. I just figured that we could use a shake-up. I'd still rather have a granddaughter. Sugar and spice and everything nice, you know. Meanness and snails and puppy dog tails for me. I'd rather have another grandson. Besides, girls have never exactly been my thing. I always preferred rowdiness to prissiness. Must be why Kushina and I got along so well. Be that as it may, that's 2 votes for girl, 1 for boy. What do you kids think? Hikaru, Jugo and Karen looked up from where they'd been playing with the foxes, and Karen immediately squealed for a little girl. Jugo gave her a sour look and spoke up for boy. Hikaru remained quiet until Sakura asked him what he wanted. I just want a little. Anything. I'd like a sibling. I just wish that I could have a tail like Dad does. I bet the baby will have tails and ears like Dad and Mom. Either way, it works out for me. I have someone new to play with. Tsunade nodded and turned to the summons. And you all? What do you want? The foxes all turned and looked at each other, shocked by the question. It didn't really matter to them what gender the kit was as long as it was there and alive. Kits were precious to the Vulpine and everyone was treasured. Genmaki, as the one who was senior in the mortal realm, was urged to answer first. I would just like my lord to have a new kit and for there to be no complications. Tsunade sighed and leaned into the foxes a bit more. Genmaki, that's not what I asked and you know it. What do you want the kid to be, boy or girl? The fox sighed and held his head down. I suppose a boy. Although perhaps having a little girl around would tone down the other 3. And give Karen someone else to play with. Penny, seeing that she wasn't going to be scratched anymore until she answered, sighed and thumped her tails impatiently. I suppose I as well would like a girl. It would be nice to see a female first in line for the throne. Jin was stared at next and yawned, making everyone narrow their eyes at him. Troublesome. A boy. Shin sighed at his less than exuberant partner's answer and perked his head up. I'd like a boy. Karen's cool, but boys are more prone to want to play and get dirty. Karen pouted and grabbed his tail roughly. I play with you all the time when I'm not training. Yes, but you don't do anything foolhardy like I do. And that gets boring sometimes. Well, I'm not going to get hurt just so you can be entertained. Boring. What about you, Megumi? I would like a little girl myself. I just love kits in general, though, so either is fine by me. I wonder who will be named as the guardian. Jin's head popped up and a gleam came to his eyes. Ah yes, another Vulpine in the mortal realm. That will be something else. I'm sure the selection process will be wonderful. Jinamki snorted and Jin turned his head to his superior. Selection process? Lord Naruto merely thought all of you looked like you could do the job or listen to my suggestions. There was no process. I think I'll suggest one of my kits to watch his, that way they grow up together like the Inuzuka clan. Yuka had been getting more and more lost as the time rolled on. She hated being out of the loop on anything and wanted a few answers. Excuse me. I know that Naruto and Ino are the monarchs of the Fox realm, but what is this about a guardian selection process? Genmaki turned to the woman and his eyes shone with mirth. Lady Yuka, it is not so much a process as a selection of one who Lord Naruto thinks is trustworthy to watch out for those he considers precious. That is why all his family have a fox to watch out for them and help them. I've been with Hikaru since he was 4. I'll be with him until he dies. Since we of the Vulpine don't age like mortals, we will be with the one we are selected to guard for their lifespan. I consider it an honor to guard Master Hikaru just as the others consider it an honor to guard their charges. Jin snorted at that. No matter how stupid they may be. Jugo growled at his guardian and yanked on one of his tails, resulting in a yelp from Gina and then from Jugo when he was bashed over the head with another tail. Sakura sighed and pulled the 2 apart. We're in a hospital, you two. Act like it. She set the sulking fox and boy down just in time to see Naruto bolt through the doors into the delivery room. Well, looks like the baby's here. Scene change, Naruto walked silently to the bedside where a beaming Ino was smiling at a bundle in her arms. Naruto smiled at his wife and kissed her forehead. Hey you. You tired? Ino looked up at him and smiled wearily. Exhausted. She's beautiful, isn't she? Naruto looked down at his new daughter and poked his finger at her nose. The little infant tried to follow his finger with both eyes and ended up cross-eyed. He chuckled and pulled his hand back. Ino, lay her down and peel the blanket back. I want to see what she looks like. Ino nodded and laid her daughter on her back while unraveling the blanket. She revealed a beautiful baby girl with foxy features. The little girl had a silver set of fox ears on her head that twisted and turned with every noise and breeze from the air vents. A single silver tail was wrapped around her waist and her eyes were a beautiful golden color. A small tuft of red hair adorned her head. Besides the whisker marks on her face, she bore absolutely no resemblance to either of her parents other than the fact that she was a demon fox. Naruto looked upon his daughter with pride and poked her belly, causing a giggle to arise from the little bundle of joy. You're right, Ino, she is beautiful. What are you going to name her? Ino looked up at her husband and sighed happily as his tails entwined with hers. It was all she could do to keep her eyes open, but she wanted this feeling to last forever. I thought we'd name her Mikomi. Naruto nodded as he went to usher everyone in to see the new mother and child. Through the window, of course. Hope. Yes, that is an appropriate name. Mikomi Hope. Scene change. After everyone had seen the baby and wished the parents well, Naruto walked back into the room and sat beside the bed as Ino fed Mikomi. He couldn't help but feel a little jealous of his daughter, especially after all the months of a no-touching rule, which both of them had blissfully ignored at one point or another, but shrugged it off. So Ino, how does being a mother feel? Tiring. And... Ow ow ow. Naruto immediately got serious. What's the matter? Are you hurt? Do I need to call the doctor? Ino scowled at him and put Mikomi back to her breast. No, it's nothing like that. It's just your daughter already has a tiny set of teeth and they hurt. I hope she weans early. Naruto chuckled at his wife's antics and sat back further in his chair. You'll get used to it. At least you have Sakura and Yuka to ask for help. Yuka's wonderful, you know, as far as a mother-in-law goes. Sakura's parents hated me. They wouldn't talk to me ever, and I think they threw a party when we got the divorce. Heh, that's why I love your parents. Ino raised an eyebrow and winced when Mikomi bit her again. Her only thought at that moment was that breastfeeding sucked. Oh? And why do you love my parents? You're not supposed to get along. I'll have you know that me and Inoichi get along splendidly. Your parents treat me like family, and for that they'll have my undying gratitude. Now then, we need to think about what we're going to do when we get home. What do you mean? We have the baby's room ready and everything. What else is there to worry about? I need to find a guardian for her. A fox to grow with her. And I believe that one of Jinmaki's kits will do just fine. Ino's eyes lit up and she giggled. I've always wanted to see what his kits looked like. I bet they're cute. They are. They are also highly intelligent, and if they grow with her they'll bond and be extremely useful. We're going to have to start watching our PS and QS with the Uchiha from here on out. He'll be looking for a chance to strike. He's gone too long without doing something. Ino sighed wearily and laid back while readjusting her gown. Mikomi lay asleep in her arms and she handed her to Naruto so she could adjust herself and get comfortable on the hospital bed. Why, oh, why didn't you just kill the asshole at the wedding? It would have saved so much trouble. But knew you just had to play the noble one and deal him a blow to his ego instead. I swear, Naruto, sometimes you're too kind even to your enemies. The Demon King sighed as he looked at his newborn daughter snuggled into his arms and kept his head down. I know, Ino. And there's not a day goes by that I don't regret not killing him there and then. But I just couldn't bring myself to do that. He had children and... I don't know what I was thinking. It just didn't seem right to assassinate the future Hokage there. You weren't assassinating him, you were performing a community service. And as far as Hokage, I can't believe the idiots of Konoha still let him take office. That's a mistake you know that you'll have to deal with sooner than later. I know, sweetie, I know. Perhaps we should have left and moved to Suna, taken Tsunade and Jiraiya with us, just up and left. But that would mean that Jugo and Karen would still be under his thumb. No. I think the current path I've laid is the correct one. When the time comes to put the Uchiha down, I'll do it, and I won't hold back this time. Ino nodded as she drifted off to sleep. I certainly hope so, dear. I just have a bad feeling about him. Scene change, 3 more months passed and the day that the 3 children could take their exam had arrived. Ino was up and about and with her demonic healing was ready to teach them. Their days as children were over. From this day forward they would be adults in the eyes of the village. The kids were excited, Jugo and Karen most of all. They would finally be able to stand on equal ground with their brother and go on missions. None of the adults had the heart to tell them of the horrors of D-rank missions. Once the kids were gone, all the adults sat around the table in Naruto's house sipping tea and waiting for the kids to come back. Mikomi played in her pen, giggling and laughing as she clutched a stuffed toy fox. Naruto had decided that on her 3rd birthday he would get a guardian for her. She wouldn't leave Ino's side till then anyway unless she left the village on a C-rank mission with her team. Tsunade smiled at her grandchild and picked her up, cradling her. Mikomi's eyes got big and she began to pat Tsunade's breast while giggling, causing Naruto to snort and try to hold in his laughter. I guess those things are fun to play with. He never got to finish whatever he was saying since all 3 women sent him crashing into the ground. Ino sighed at her husband's stupidity and refilled the teacups. I guess that I'll be really busy after today. I haven't taught a team before. It'll be interesting to say the least. Naruto rubbed his head and ignored the snickering of the foxes behind him as he took his seat again. Don't worry honey, I'll be there to help you. No worries. That's exactly what I'm worried about. Naruto pouted and turned his back on the women while they laughed at his expense. Mornings like these weren't all that common, so any merriment was welcome. Naruto had become more and more tense, worrying about what Sasuke was going to do, and his usually jovial mood seemed to be forgotten. His smile came back however when he took his daughter from Tsunade and lifted her over his head while she giggled happily. Everything's going to be just fine, huh Mikomi? Don't you listen to mommy one bit. Daddy's gonna make everything okay. The women all smiled at the little melodramatic scene. Perhaps everything would be all right. Scene change, Hikaru, Jugo and Karen along with their escorts nearly tore the door off coming into the house, raising the ire of a certain Uzumaki. Oi oi oi. What the hell do you hooligans think you're doing? Cut that shit out and calm down. Oh now look, you've woken the baby. The 3 stood somewhat shamefully as Naruto tried to get Mikomi to quiet back down while Ino emerged from the bedroom rubbing her eyes sleepily. Tsunade and Sakura appeared soon after hearing the ruckus from across the property. They thought Sasuke was attacking with all the noise. Tsunade immediately saw the headbands proudly on display and hugged Hikaru. So you passed, huh brat? I'm very proud of you. Sakura congratulated her children while Ino and Naruto hung back watching the proceedings. Once the others had settled down, Ino coughed into her hand and smirked at the new genin. You realize of course that your asses are mine? From here on out you are no longer children, you are soldiers under my command and will do as you are told with no questions asked. I'll officially be Major Commander in a couple days and will begin training and missions. We'll hold off on the Chunin exams for a year or 2 to make sure you're ready. Other than that we'll carry on as usual. Naruto stepped forward and smiled at the 3 genin. Congrats kids. I'm proud of you all. I want you to realize that the only time your guardians will help you is in battle. We expect you all to be competent ninja on your own and not to rely on the power of your helpers. Now that said, who's up for a new recipe? This piqued everyone's attention. Naruto rarely used new recipes. And they were all delicious. Ino, drooling at the prospect of something different, spoke up. What is it? Naruto smiled and walked into the kitchen. It's called ABC chicken. Tsunade cocked an eyebrow and sat at the table. Why's it called ABC chicken? Because it's as easy as ABC. Naruto pouted as they all groaned. No one ever appreciated his jokes. Scene change, it was midnight in Konohagakure and everyone was sleeping. Everyone except for one person. Sasuke sat in his chair in the Hokage's office looking over the team selections that Irika had put together. Most were adequate, but when he came to Ino's team he paused and scowled. Leave it to the Uzumaki to pit things in his favor. This way all the children were guarded and Naruto could be called at a moment's notice. Not only that, but the kids would all have foxes guarding them, and demon foxes at that. Getting his spawn back wouldn't be easy. He was about to amend the teams when his window slid open and he turned to see who would dare intrude, only to find no one. I know what you were about to do, Sasuke. And I wouldn't recommend you doing it. Sasuke turned slowly to find the demon Fox King sitting cross-legged on his desk holding Ino's team's file in his hand. He smirked at this and leaned back in his chair. And why is that? Do you actually think you can stop me? I will have my revenge on you one day, Naruto, that's a promise. Don't think that just because you have had me stalemated in the past that I can't cook up something else. Naruto narrowed his eyes and dropped the file back on the desk. Sasuke, I don't know why you insist on trying to make my life miserable or why you even carry a vendetta against me. I've never done anything to you to deserve it. You've always been an instigator of true violence between us. Is it so much to ask that you leave the children out of this? Let them grow up happy. Stop being such an asshole. Those brats are mine, Uzumaki. They are my legacy and will be raised as true Uchiha. See, that's the whole problem, Sasuke. You're not trying to be a father. You're trying to be an Uchiha. Your children are scared of you and you don't see that. Is that truly what you want? Don't do this to yourself or them, Sasuke. I'm telling you, I'm not asking you. Sasuke's eyes narrowed to mere slits and he leaned forward until his nose nearly touched Naruto's. Know this, Uzumaki. You have taken everything from me. My family, my seed, everything. I blame you for the massacre, I blame you for my brother, I blame you for everything. Naruto sighed and leaned back. You truly are mad. There will come a day soon, Uchiha, when you and I will fight. And on that day you will die. Realize this, Uzumaki. If I die, I will not go alone. And it may not be you going with me. Naruto's visage immediately turned savage and his true power erupted, awakening everyone in Konoha. Sasuke himself was suffocating under the power and the two Umbu outside the door had already passed out. Naruto's red eyes and huge fangs shone in the moonlight filtering through the window. And realize this, Uchiha. If any of my family dies, then I will personally follow you into hell and torture you for all eternity. I will make sure that your brother has full access to torment you, that you watch your family die again over and over. I will make your afterlife miserable, Uchiha. The Kami herself will not save you, the Shinigami will not save you. I will ensure your life is nothing but a waste. I could kill you now and be well within my rights. You have threatened my family not once but twice now. The next time we meet, Uchiha, I shall devour you. The sour taste will not keep me from doing it. May you rot in the layers of hell for all eternity. With his piece said, Naruto was gone in a flash of flame, all the papers on Sasuke's desk erupting into flame except the Academy graduates folders. Once he had his breathing back under control, the Uchiha sat up and clutched his chest. He was truly a fool, taunting one who was as close to being a god as one could get. He'd done it twice and had gotten away because of the demon's benevolence. He needed a contingency plan in case he actually had to face the king in the future. Suddenly realization came across his face. Of course. There is that jutsu. Scene change, Naruto slipped back into his bedroom to find Ino comforting Hikaru as she cradled Mikomi. He realized that his power must have engulfed Konoha and he sheepishly rubbed the back of his head, throwing Ino an apologetic look. Hikaru leapt into his arms, already knowing who was responsible for the wave of power. Dad, what was that all about? Did you get in a fight with someone? No, I didn't, son. I just lost control for a moment. I was mad about something. Now you get to bed. All ninjas need their rest. Hikaru walked off grumbling about never knowing anything as Naruto crawled into bed beside Ino. How'd the talk go? I think you know. I came this close to killing him, Ino, I really did. Don't worry, the kids are yours. But I'll have to do something about him in the near future. I fear I may have to kill him. Ino kissed her husband on the cheek and handed him their daughter. He smiled at his daughter as her tail waved happily and she grasped at his cheeks. The little girl always made him smile and he ran his hand through her red hair. His nose suddenly detected something foul and he glared at Ino, who smiled devilishly. You woke her up, you change her, oh mighty ruler of foxes. Naruto grumbled as he changed his daughter while Ino slept. His one revenge was putting the offending object close to her nose while she slept and watching as her eyes watered and she gagged while he laughed. It was worth sleeping on the couch that night.
Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.